there could be a more inspiring way to start the evening, but by seeing such enthusiastic and energetic faces. And I know that the only plausible answer to that rhetorical question would be a no. Esteemed jury members, dignitaries, team members, our wise brains behind some of the most groundbreaking innovations, our sparkling guests, and every person whose efforts have gone into giving the grand finale a literal meaning, I extend a very hearty and warm welcome to you all to the second day of KPIT Sparkle 2022. It feels like an understatement in my head, yet let me say that your presence made yesterday so much more fantastic than I had imagined. And allow me to say this on everyone's behalf, we couldn't wait for the second day to start, could we? So without delaying it any further, I'd like to invite Dr. Unnat Pandit, Professor IP Innovation and Entrepreneurship at JNU, to begin day 2 of KPIT Sparkle 2022 Grand Finale by delivering his keynote speech. So over to you, sir.
It is indeed a pleasure to share the thoughts with the KPIT Innovation Sparkle event. This is one of the great events being conducted every year for the researcher from the engineering, science, and the design student. This is something which is indeed a need of an hour. The country is looking for the solutions which are a pain area for India. And we need the cutting edge innovations. And for designing this cutting edge innovation, we need to have a focus on the intellectual property. This is something where India need a persistent efforts. And I think the event like KPIT Sparkle is going to offer us such an opportunity. So once again, kudos to the budding innovators who are participating in this wonderful event. This event is going to boost the temperament of designing something new, inventive, which has the patentable subject matter. And it is equally important for all of you to convert this patentable invention into the commercially sellable innovation. And this is a real-time challenge for all of us. World is facing a problem. And just by an estimate that more than 97% patents are not even seeing the light out of the research bench work. Maybe 3% patents are explored for the commercial use. And how many are actually successful, which might be even less than 1%. And again, in the technology domain area, like the EV, for which the events are being conducted, which is the future for India and the world. We need so many innovations in this particular space. And this really can offer by the young innovators who are passionate for the futuristic mobility, futuristic energy solutions. India is offering a great opportunity through such events. Opportunities to build yourself as the future entrepreneur. If you have designed a solution, I want to see you the CEO of a startup into the mobility or energy sector. And that's the future for you. Such event will certainly help you to fetch the funding for your concept and the prototypes which you are demonstrating this event. And certainly, this is not a 1 day or 1 week event. A persistent efforts are being made. You all know that you have been attached with a mentor who has the industry experience. You have been attached with certain professionals who can guide you on the technology fronts. And certainly, it's a duty for you to work and think out of box. Design a new cutting edge futuristic solution which offer you the IP, intellectual property. And it's a wonderful that the idea which is sparkling in your mind, you can see the commercial success resulting out of your idea. And this is a very lengthy journey. But at each milestone, you need to try, challenge yourself and ensure that your idea, your prototype, your solution, your commercial product is meeting the expectation which you want to serve for the society. Maybe a winning prize is the motivation for few of you. But this event offering you to ideate something, to create your own intellectual property, and showing the path for all of you to explore the journey for entrepreneurship is something which is the future for you. Country has a lot of expectation from you. हम सब चाहते हैं कि नए भारत का निर्माण होना चाहिए, लेकिन नए भारत का निर्माण कौन करेगा? आपकी जनरेशन को आप जैसा भारत चाहते हैं वैसा बनाना होगा. And it is not necessary that the young innovators from the metro city who are full-fledged into the access to the technology, knowledge, and the facilities can only design. No. KPIT Sparkle has proven it wrong. The students and young innovators from the small cities are designing the cutting edge innovation. Dr. Kalam was not from the metro city, but he is country's best scientist ever. Generally, I don't refer any kind of a movie or a web series or anything, but I would recommend all of you to see the Rocket Boys, under which condition this scientists were working. Dr. Homi Bhabha, Vikram Sarabhai, Dr. Kalam, and how the problems will get pop up, and how they have designed a wonderful innovations using the limited resources. Maybe that was around the independence time. And now you have a Bharat which is celebrating Amrit Mahotsav. You have all the information on the fingertip. Just on a single click, you can get enormous literature on screen. So definitely it's a time for all of you to utilize this. I'm told that there are almost 27 states participating in this event. At least one commercially deployable invention can be designed, one invention per state. Then we will have a 27 solutions in the mobility and energy segment. More than 1,000 colleges are participating. Few IITs, few NITs, and several ideas are getting screened throughout this event. And many such ideas are going to get incubated also. So it's a bare minimum expectation which country is looking from you. अमृत महोत्सव पर हम ऐसे 27 इनोवेशन को डिजाइन करना चाहते हैं तो कम से कम अमृत महोत्सव में हम ऐसा लक्ष्य रख सकते हैं क्या? इसमें से हम 75 पेटेंट एप्लीकेशंस फाइल करेंगे. This may be a great tribute to those scientists who have seen the vision of India in the science and technology. The way we have seen Dr. Homi Bhabha designing the atomic reactor for India to have a self-sufficiency in the energy space. Still, we have to now design a solution for energy-driven mobility, which is the future of India. And nobody, no other corporate or entity will come design a solution and deploy into the India. No, they don't know the Indian demography. They don't know the Indian challenges and on-ground situation, which is the major advantage for you. And it's you who know the and have the access to all these resources. Now, only the thing which you have to do is utilize your knowledge. Have a deep diving into the problem area and identify where the screw is pinching. And then design various possibilities to address this challenge. And bring your best for yourself, for your institution, for your family, for your society and the country. I think that will be the greatest tribute from you to the country. And that will be a biggest achievement forever in your career. KPIT Sparkle is giving you this opportunity. Try to utilize this and gain the maximum benefit out of this. I think that would be the greatest achievement for all of you when you are going to go at your institution. Don't leave your passion. Rather than you should pursue your passion. Success and failure are just a matter of a single flip here and there. They have given their best. You might have missed with a few points, but that doesn't mean that your idea doesn't have a potential. You need to persistently work on your idea. You need to make sure that you offer the best from your intellect, and that will be the biggest success in your life. And I think that achievement you can gain if you continuously pursue your passion. Convert this idea in your passion. I think that will see the success among you. That will give the inner strength within you to work for yourself, for the country. I think that is the expectation from you when you are going from this KPIT Sparkle. With these words, I would like to pause myself. I was thinking to remain present, but unfortunately, I could not able to remain present. And I will be missing the biggest opportunity in my life to see all this. And my prior experience was excellent. Still, I am in touch with few such students, and we keep on interacting. Now, I want to see the future from you, the passionate Tata, Birla, Ambani is sitting in this audience. Only the thing they have pursued their dreams. Are you ready to pursue your dream? Don't give answer to me or anybody. Give your answer to yourself, your heart. If the answer is yes, then you will achieve the success. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pandit, for your kind words. Let me now take the opportunity to welcome Shobhit Shrotriya, who is the Managing Director of Global Life Sciences R&D Operations, Accenture Life Sciences R&D Operations. He is an engineer by training with a master's in industrial management from IIT Kanpur and is a certified Six Sigma black belt and project management professional. With more than 21 years of work experience, Shobhit has extensive experience in operations management, project and program management, process excellence, and innovation. Shobhit is a subject matter expert who contributes to the solution development, process re-engineering, and implementation of life sciences outsourcing service delivery. Today, he will share his insights about intelligent innovations. So let's hear him.
Hello, everyone. Hope everybody is doing well. I'm so delighted to be a part of this session. And I would like to thank KPIT Sparkle 2022 team for giving me this opportunity to come together and present in this forum. It's a pleasure to meet all of you and present to this audience. Hopefully, in today's context, while everybody is working remotely, learning remotely, doing things remotely, this session equally would help you gather some insights which I have taken over or learned over a period of time as a part of my professional journey. My name is Shobhit Shrotriya. I am an engineer by training. It has been 22 years in the industry. I've done my master's in management from IIT Kanpur, a certified Six Sigma black belt, and a project management professional. You would be wondering that why I am here and what I'm going to talk about. So interestingly, I'm an engineer by training, but I would say that last 16 plus years of my career, I've spent in the life sciences industry, the biopharmaceutical industry. One of the things which you would realize while I will talk about the topic that I'm going to cover today is what has inspired me to stay with a biopharmaceutical industry, though I'm an engineer, right? And the topic for today definitely hovers around innovation, given that the Sparkle event is all about innovation, and all of you have been contributing and trying to aspire to build things which are really disruptive in nature, which are using technology to transform the way we work in today's context. So my topic of interest today is the journey to intelligent innovation, right? And I will take a few moments to first introduce the topic to you. Uh, but before I do that, let me bring up my slide deck. Okay, so I'm a managing director at Accenture today, and I lead the global life sciences R&D operations. But interestingly, I'm also a student, and I'm part of your larger group as well. How? I am pursuing my PhD in data science, and that's why I know the value of learning. I believe learning is something which is very integral to all of us and very, very important as we navigate through our personal professional journey. So never stop learning. In today's next 20 minutes or so, I would like to talk about few things which are related to innovation. First is to look at digital disruption. Now, this word of digital disruption is sometimes very loosely used. People just use the word digital and talk about disruptions happening all across. But maybe a real example coming from across industries will help you understand what I'm talking about. The second piece I would like to talk about is giving you some perspective if you are not aware of what happens in the pharmaceutical industry. And the reason I'm picking up this topic is I belong to this industry and I've seen how innovation over a period of time has really helped us do things very, very differently. The recent most example being the COVID vaccine, which got launched, right? Whether it is the global biopharmaceuticals or the Indian players who made contributions to that. Innovation played a very, very large role there. The third important thing I would like to touch base is responsible innovation. And the reason I want to use the word responsible is sometimes we don't realize the innovations that we are working on or the things that we are inventing may or may not work the way they were intended to work, right? Something may go wrong. And we need to be careful when things go wrong. We need to work within the remit of ethics and compliance without compromising the integrity of what the product that we are developing is going to deliver. And finally, I'll leave you with my thoughts around the futuristic journey, which I would say is a combination of human plus machine working together in tandem. This topic is also very important and close to my heart for the simple reason that innovation is something which I practice every day. I have a couple of patents on my name, and I filed a patent very recently. So hopefully, if I get the third patent, so I will have three patents on my name. The reason I am talking about all this is not to boast about myself, but talking about how the passion of learning has kept me moving every passing day. Okay, so with that context, let me get going to the first part of my presentation, which is talking about the history of digital disruption. Now, there are certain logos that you see on this slide, right? And you would wonder what have these logos to do with innovation? Uh, Look at this from the point of view of I come from a time frame when I was a student, either a school going or a college going. It was 80s and 90s, and at that point of time, digital was not known at all. For example, in today's context, can you imagine a kid growing up not having a mobile phone? Mobile phones were not known at that point of time. So let me, instead of picking four out of these, let me pick up a couple of stories and I'll tell you the stories. Maybe the first one is Netflix. Some of you who come from that time frame, that time period, would remember that we used to have what we called as VHS cassettes, video cassette recorders, right? Uh, that was a point of time when CDs, DVDs, digital streaming, video streaming was totally unknown. And I'm talking about in mid 90s. So the Netflix story goes like this. It was 1997, and Reed Hastings, who founded Netflix, uh, and this is a story which you would relate to as well, because this is something which may happen to any one of us. And he, during that time, had borrowed a cassette of Apollo 13, the famous movie, from a video shop on a rental. Now, he saw the movie, and then he didn't return the cassette. He forgot to return the cassette and he misplaced it somewhere. Uh, he forgot to really find out where to find this cassette. And when there were reminders coming from the rental shop, he was asked for a penalty of $40. He didn't share that with his wife at home, uh, thinking that what will she say and what will she think. He ended up paying $40 as the penalty. But that triggered a thought in his mind, saying that why we have to stream videos on a cassette recorder, why it cannot be digital, why can't I have a medium which is totally digital? And that was the start of Netflix, right? In today's context, whether it is Netflix, and there are thousand more that you talk today, right? Everything is video streaming, right? You can't even imagine your life without a Netflix. 1997, it was a different story. So that was an example of a digital disruption, a truly digital disruption. The other example I want to pick up is Uber, right? Again, in today's context, it is Uber, Ola, you name, so many different platforms are there. But think about it 20 years back when this idea of transportation, Uber taxi, Ola taxis was totally unknown, right? So again, a very uh, human story, if I have to say that way. 2007, the founder of Uber, he was celebrating Christmas. Rather, it was New Year, if I'm not wrong. And he and his friends wanted to, they went to New York, they had not seen the city, and they took taxi rides, and they end up spending close to $1,000 just traversing from one point to another point. And that put a big hole in their pocket. They lost all the money just traversing from one point to another point. And they said, what if there was a concept of sharing a taxi, paying consumption by use, right? Pay by consumption, pay by use. And that's the genesis of Uber. And no looking back, 15, 20 years now, more than 100 million users of Uber as we speak today, right? I can go on and tell stories about others as well. Amazon, again, an e-commerce platform, Spotify, the way we are talking about video streaming, again, Spotify is taking the audio streaming this very same way, right? So I wanted to start with this context because these are true examples of across industry digital disruptions. And I'm sure each one of us will get inspired with these stories. And I'm sure each one of us have a story to tell as well. Okay, with that, let me move forward and talk a little bit of what's happening in today's context. We are in 2022, right? And we see there is a lot of focus across the globe, across the industries to adopt technologies that are focused on transforming the day-to-day operations, whether it is a banking industry, it's a utility industry, it's a energy industry, it's a life sciences industry, you name anything, right? Everybody is looking at solutions which are path breaking, right? If you look at the graphic that I have out here, the x-axis and the y-axis, it just talks about earlier days when process improvements were driven by kaizens, like incremental continuous improvements, Six Sigma approaches, and so on and so forth. Over a period of time, we started bringing in robotic process automations, which were primarily mimicking what a human does, right? For example, if I'm doing a data entry into a system, how can a machine perform that data entry without Shobhit keying in that particular page or a document into the system, right? So those are repetitive tasks which mimics the human actions. Then slowly we started moving towards what we say cognitive automation, where we are saying, what can we do to mimic a human judgment, right? Now, if you look at it, some examples can be the unstructured data, the data that needs to get converted from an unstructured format to a structured format. There might be situations where, for example, somebody is doing a teleconsultation rather than a medic being there. The bot, the system is recommending you prescription, right? So you're taking judgment on behalf of an human, right? So you're bringing in or you're building cognitive abilities within a machine to do the activities and the tasks, thereby really improving the business outcomes, right? It is improving the cost. It is speeding up the way things are done today, and definitely improving the quality of the process altogether. And finally, in today's context, artificial intelligence, machine learning is such a buzzword, right? We talk about how we can create systems, tools, which will really take over and perform activities as if the human was doing it in a much faster, effective, efficient manner, right? So uh, if you look at it from that point of view, everybody is working on building technologies, whether it is your mobile phones, where we are talking about uh, Alexas of the world, Cortanas of the world, to image recognition, to your pattern recognition, to your natural language processing, to development of neural networks, and things like that, which are really transforming the way each part of the new gadget is being used in today's context. So far, so good. Let me now switch gears and talk to you about the pharmaceutical R&D landscape. And the reason I want to talk about is to give you understanding of the complexity what this process brings and why it is so complex. If you look at it, it seems very simple, right? We take a medication for anything that, say, for example, if we fall sick, if we have a fever, we take a Disprin, we take a Crocin. If we have any other disease, the medications are there for each and everything. But try to understand from the point of view of it's not that it is these medications came to the market overnight, right? It is a process in itself. It takes at least 10 years on an average, and it costs around $2.6 billion to bring a new medication or a new vaccine into the market, right? The drug development and drug research is a field which is very, very cumbersome and complex. Now, the reason I want to bring this out is when it takes 10 to 12 years to bring a novel drug to the market, if you look at what we did, the COVID vaccine, 6 months to 12 months, we accelerated the entire process. And the vaccines were rolled out in such a record time. How did it happen? It happened because of innovation. It happened because the scientific community came together, tied up hands, shook hands with the technologists, and found out ways and means of how do we accelerate the entire drug development process. So if you look at it from that point of view, it is really, really very complex process. And just to give you an overview of how this would function and how would this work, uh, assume there is a molecule being researched upon in a particular lab, right? Before you can start working on the molecule, you have to first test the safety of that particular molecule to ensure that if I'm testing it on the animals, it is safe to consume, right? Then you have to look at it from the point of view whether it is effective or not. So safety and efficacy. Now, one of the important parameters is before you start the human trials, the safety and efficacy of that particular molecule should have been established to a certain extent. And then there are different phases of the trials, and I'll not bore you with those phases. It lasts, it is called a phase one trial, a phase two trial, a phase three trial, and it is conducted on patients, right? It is conducted on patients who are suffering from that disease. And different phases of the trial looks at different uh, important parameters which can be related to your safety, immunogenicity, your efficacy, and it is compared with any other drug which might be there in the market available already for that particular disease, right? Once you have conducted the clinical trial, then you have to submit uh, the data collected during the conduct of the clinical trial to regulatory authorities and seek approval before the drug can be launched to the market. So the regulatory authorities provide what they call as marketing authorization, right? So it's a process which takes a long, long time. Now, what was done differently during the COVID vaccine development? The entire piece of data that was being collected was being cleaned and churned out into a data analysis at a record speed. The biopharmaceutical organizations were using AI ML enabled techniques to capture data, to clean data, to analyze data, and to report data. So the entire process got accelerated multifolds. But it is not an easy task to just to curtail the entire clinical trial from multiple years to a few months. That also required special approvals from the regulatory authorities. And that's why you see when FDAs of the world or DCGI, our uh, Indian agency, when they grant approval, they say emergency use authorization, EUA. So, long story short, the reason I'm talking about this specific example is this is another way to look at how innovation can be applied into our day-to-day lives. How pharmaceutical industry also, for example, is innovating the way the banking industry, the manufacturing industry, the automobile industry, the energy industry is automating and innovating. So let me move and switch gears to what I was talking earlier, what we call as responsible innovation. The word responsible was actually initially coined using keeping artificial intelligence in mind, and it was called responsible AI. For the purpose of the discussion in this forum, I just replaced the word AI with innovation because I believe that AI is nothing but a medium to enable innovations for the different things that we want to achieve through software development or through hardware development or any other gadgets, assets that we are developing. So just imagine, for example, you're a part of a team which has been executing a big innovation project, right? The team has set goals around how to improve the efficiency of the current processes, how to reduce cost, how to enhance the user experience. And the team comprises of great data scientists and AI experts, right? You have really executed the project and your stakeholders are very, very happy. Now you come forward and make a big announcement that everybody this project or product is now launched, and there is a very positive sentiment. And suddenly then you find there is a backlash, there is a wave of backlash. What happened? Something went wrong somewhere, right? When you published a paper, you found out there are many people who are screaming out loud, discrediting the algorithms that you had built. There is a lot of skepticism, and people are cautioning not to use this product of software at all. Everywhere around the world, the data science experts are denouncing that the tool is unreliable and inaccurate. What went wrong, right? Just think about it, what went wrong. And I'll give you a couple of examples of what can go wrong in things that we develop sometimes. And here are a couple of examples. And these are in the public domain. You can Google them and find out yourselves and read about it, right? First example is from Amazon. Amazon was developing what they called as a HR hiring tool way back in 2014, right? And they wanted to really make the uh, recruitment process very effective, efficient by automating the entire process. What happened was they built a algorithm, an AI enabled algorithm, which was looking at the data of CVs that were within the Amazon system for the last 10 years. And they wanted to build a screening algorithm of, okay, based on the past data, when I would like my algorithm to learn what are the right values to look at, what are the right attributes to look at when they are screening a new CV which comes in for a particular position. And believe it or not, what happens is they train the algorithm with all the past data. And when they test the algorithm, they find out that for some reason, the algorithm is just filtering out all the women candidates. When they went back and tried to do a deep dive root cause analysis, they found that predominantly the database that they had of the 10 years had 80-90% of resumes which were from the male candidates. And the reason being, again, software industry, the hardware industry at that point of time, it was more man-centric than women-centric. And the database learned from it and started to reject anything which was related to women. They tried to fix the algorithm. They tried to fine tune the parameters, but over a period of time, they found out that they are not really able to get the outcome that they wanted to achieve, and they ended up really scrapping the project altogether. So here is an example of a bias getting embedded into the algorithm. The other example I want to talk about is the Microsoft Twitter bot that was called Tay, thinking about you. right? And Microsoft built this chatbot in 2016, and again they powered it by an artificial intelligent neural network. And this bot, say for example, if I'm communicating with the bot, I'm chatting with the bot will learn from me because I'm the end user interacting with the bot. And people misuse the bot where all the filthy languages, not so good words, inflammatory tweets were added, and the bot started learning everything and anything which was uh, not acceptable in the society. And within 16 flat hours, Microsoft had to take away this bot from the servers and decommission it. The reason I'm talking about these two examples is could Microsoft or Amazon have done something different? They being the brand names, right? Why couldn't they take care of these small things, in our opinion, and something went wrong, right? And this is the factor of the bias which I'm talking about, and that is why the responsible AI or responsible innovation is very, very important. We have to arrest any unintended consequences, unexpected consequences, which may lead to outcomes which are going to impact one and all. There, there going to be there is going to be an impact on the society because of the actions that he would take. The other important reason I want to bring this out is, as students, when you are researching, building assets. This is the start of your journey. And when you start working in large corporates, whenever you are working on an innovation, remember that responsible innovation is very, very important. Compliance and security of whatever you build is very critical. It should not become business threatening. It should not become society threatening to the society at all. Okay, so let me move on and come to my final part of the presentation, which is the futuristic journey. The futuristic journey definitely it looks very, very promising. If I have to put it that way, I'm very excited about the fact that in today's context, you continue to see young entrepreneurs coming up with new novel ideas, right? And uh, if you read the three uh, quotes that I have it out here on this page, one of the important messages that I take away from myself for myself is uh, we are getting empowered with superhuman powers or superpowers, the way I call it. But together with that comes a great responsibility, right? If you look across industries, just for statistics purposes, 69% of the business leaders believe their industry will be completely transformed by intelligent technologies. But only 3% of the executives plan to significantly increase investments in upskilling and development programs for people, right? So important for all of us to understand that the technology era has come. People are willing to invest, but there is still a lot of investment needs to happen for us to really upskill ourselves. The second important piece I want to talk about is uh, remember that first time when you develop something, you may or may not be able to succeed, right? And just as a statistic, Gartner published 2 3 years back, it said 85% of the projects will deliver erroneous outcomes if they're implementing AI due to the bias in the data, the examples that I just spoke about, right? So don't be disheartened if your project fails. Always look at the positive side of how you can enhance and work in a different way. And always remember, right, everything and anything that we do today, data is a part or heart of everything, right? And sometimes you would feel, and I would say it myself, though I'm a Six Sigma black belt, and I would say what I'm talking, I believe data is always objective, but no, data is not objective. It is also reflective of pre-existing social and cultural biases, and we saw that in the couple of examples like the Microsoft Twitter bot, day that I was talking about, or in the Amazon hiring tool, right? It had some cultural biases which we need to filter out. So whenever you work on an innovation, look at it holistically, just not focus on the end outcome, but also look at how the end outcome can be less threatening to the society, taking care of anything and everything which has to do with the business and the people around you. Uh, the next piece I want to leave you with is it's human and machine will always work in tandem. It's never going to be that machine is going to overtake the humans, right? At the end of the day, it is the human who is programming the machines, right? So it has to be a right balance between the two, right? You have to appreciate and acknowledge the fact that the life today is given where humans plus machine have started to transact together, they have started to iterate together, they have started to evolve together, right? And anything and everything that we are doing, we are co-creating together with the machines, right? We are improvising together with them. Any decision that we are making it together with them. So important for us as students, uh, look at it from a point of view of how the entire work can get reimagined, and that reimagining can happen only by first learning. And that is why, unless you create awareness for yourself, you do experiments, you do a lot of prototyping, you will not succeed, right? So that if you have to reimagine yourself as a student, awareness, exploration, experimentation is the first step. The second important step is, once you are aware, then you can develop the prototypes, run various proofs of concepts, uh, create isolated silos where you can do experimentation for what will yield the outcome that you want to achieve. And finally, once you have tested the concept, it's a time to industrialize, right? Deploy at scale, launch new business models. And I think each one of us has the ability and the capability to do that. One of the most important thing that you should always remember is keep learning, keep trying. All your prototypes, or every effort that you have put in is really, really well appreciated and well acknowledged. I'll talk about a small script of a snippet of a poem that I remember. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. If you would remember, this is a beautiful poem, Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. And this poem is very, very close to my heart. This poem, if you look at it, conveys multiple aspects. One is never stop trying. You will face different adversities in life. You will come across different situations in life. But at the end of the day, you need to keep moving. At the end of the day, you need to learn from whatever learnings are coming your way and move on to the next available thing. And that's why miles to go before I sleep, miles to go before I sleep, right? So I gave you an example of two patents that I have. Did they come easily to me? No. I think it's years and years of passion to do something different, something new. And each one of you, I think, have a potential to do things differently. And that's why you are a part of this Sparkle 2022 event. You made it here is a testimony to the fact that you have those skills in you which can take you to the next level. Always also remember, tough times never last, tough people do. That's a very wonderful saying. That's a book by Robert Schuller, and you should read that book. It gives you a very, very different perspective. So all the very best from my side. Keep doing things differently, keep thinking differently, keep innovating, and wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Shrotriya, for your illuminating note. Moving on, it is my honor and absolute pleasure to invite Mr. Rakesh Mehta, the founder director, Bitmapper Integration Technologies Private Limited, a serial entrepreneur, Indian defense and space systems design expert, a pioneer of nationwide VLSI design curriculum, and an alumni of IIT Bombay and IIT Madras. Mr. Mehta specializes in providing technological solutions to complex, unstructured problems in a short span of time and without iterations. He has over 20 years of experience of designing more than 75 complex systems for Indian space and defense agencies, many of which have been deployed on the field by the military. Mr. Mehta, please share your take on semiconductor design and if India will be on the global map.
Semiconductor design opportunities in India. This is the topic that I'll be discussing. So while we talk about this topic, two things that come to my mind is why is this question being asked? And why is it being asked today? I mean, why was it not there? I mean, maybe 1 year, 2 years, or 10 years ago. Talk about that why is it happening now? So what has happened is, according to a report, the demand in the Indian market driven by higher consumption, etc. So that the India will have a requirement for semiconductor chips, which is the end product of the semiconductor design, approximately 400 billion by the year 2030. So that will be our internal consumption. And if we export something, then obviously that opportunity will be bigger. And we all have been hearing this. I mean, that since the new government came in, Make in India initiative was being taken up in a big way. Atmanirbhar Bharat is another big way. So while this was being done in defense, in automobiles, EVs, and many other areas, semiconductor design was something that we were still dependent upon others. So recently, Government of India has set up a big plan to design or provide facilities for semiconductor design in the country. So motivation for this comes from the making India self-reliant in all areas where we don't have the necessary technology and we are totally dependent on other countries. So while we don't get into the politics, but we still know that recently, in the recent past, automobile deliveries have been delayed, or because chips have been in shortage. And unfortunately, all the major fabs where the chips are fabricated are controlled by China. So China mainland and Taiwan. So the government had been working on this for the past 3-4 years. It was taking feedback from various research departments like ISRO, DRDO, industry bodies, education research institutes like IITs, etc. And they were just figuring out that what kind of things should be done and how it should be done. So finally, now there is a plan in place. So now government has almost committed $20 billion in creating infrastructure for chip designing. Now, please remember that this is for chip designing. This is not for fabs. Fabs is a separate issue. So that is being handled by some other people. The government only, but we are not discussing that. So another thing that typically when somebody wants to do something in India, the first thing that comes to mind is bureaucracy. Will be able to do it? How easy it will be? There are so many licensing. So what government has done is it has created nodal agencies across the country. So these nodal agencies will help create design hubs and they will solve all their problems as related to bureaucracy, registering, etc. Now going beyond, if you talk about a startup or a small scale MSME company or an individual who wants to get into this, so various schemes started by government are Startup India, where they prefer, that new people can come in and do new things. In fact, earlier days, what happened was whenever we wanted to make something in India, specifically for space or defense or the government, they used to ask, what is your history? Have you done this before? And that is the reason something new could not be done. But now government has stopped that. Under Startup India, anybody can go register and start doing what he wants. And the government will support and monitor what is happening. So there is this scheme called a Startup India, which facilitates new startups to come up and start doing new things or great things in India. Then money. So as far as the money part goes, government is giving lots of incentives. So there is a deployment linked incentive. There's a product design linked incentive. So when we talk of chip designing, this is actually a design. So government is providing design linked incentives, so that once you start doing something, government is providing a huge amount of money to set yourself up, because the tools required for this is large. I mean, basically when you're doing chip designing, the cost of the tools is really high. So the incentives include capital, support on tools, place, etc., etc. Further, the government is also investing in a big way in training manpower for chip designing. Under the program called as SMDP, the government is almost training 87,000 people to get this done. So a bit about the Atmanirbhar semiconductor ecosystem, design linked incentive or DLI scheme. So fiscal support from the government of India is as follows: a product design linked incentive, reimbursement up to 50% of the eligible expenditure subject to a ceiling of 15 crores per application. Deployment linked incentive is again same, about 30 crores per application for the next 5 years. So what it means is so it's not a loan. I mean, actually it's an incentive. I mean, so it's like as if the government is funding capital for doing this. So the tenure of the scheme is 5 years, and it has started on January 2022. So it is just a fresh scheme, but within this 1.5 months itself, many companies have come up and incubated themselves, registered themselves, and doing things are actually moving fast. And to begin with, government plans that 100 domestic semiconductor design companies should come up and start doing something. So I'll just give you a bit about the nodal agencies. I mean, there are many more. I mean, so this SAFAL, SFAL COE, Semiconductor Fabless Accelerator Lab, is an initiative of the government of Karnataka. It is based in Bangalore. And here they are enabling fabless startups. Again, at IIT Hyderabad, this FABCI, FABCI, has been incubated. Now, this place, they are providing space for 100 companies where they provide place, they provide common tools, and they give you complete technical support. In fact, because this is based in IIT Hyderabad, the professors are there to help you out. So basically, government is setting up a complete CDAC Pune itself is a nodal agency, and it is providing DLI, PLI schemes at local level also. So anyone who wants to get into this can directly talk to any one of these agencies or anybody, and there are many more. I mean, like, and actually directly get into it. So there's nothing to fear about. I mean, the government is helping in a big way. I mean, like, so they're completely setting up the infrastructure so that you can just go use your brains, use your knowledge, use your imagination, and develop something good for the country. So these are certain schemes I mentioned over here, which somebody can refer to. I mean, so one scheme is called as the Chips to Startup Company. So again, so all this, the nodal agencies, the DLI, PLI schemes, and these schemes called as Chips DLI, Mehta, which earlier was called as Niti Aayog, then Chips to Startup. So what the government has done is from all angles, it is capturing whatever is required to start up, and the end product should be a chip. So there are multiple government agencies and multiple government websites. There are multiple government people who are working on this. So all what I want to project from here is that the government is initiating or removing all your speed breakers and bottlenecks in a big way to help you start designing chips. Now, when we talk of designing a chip, so if somebody wants to get into business, the first question that he or she is going to ask himself, or if it goes for investment to somebody else, the question that is going to be asked is, what is the size of the opportunity? That if I design a chip, what is the overall size of the opportunity? So as I mentioned earlier, that our own requirement will rise to 400 billion by 2030 or earlier, depending upon how it goes. So that itself is the size of the opportunity. But if you really look at it, for us as Indians, it is an infinite opportunity, because not a single chip is of Indian design. There is not a single chip that India has designed. There are no devices, there are no catalog products that India has. So for us, the whole world is an opportunity. I mean, like, so the size of opportunity is really infinite. I mean, like, so size of opportunity should not be a problem. I mean, if we talk about what is the pedigree, or we talk about semiconductor design. So does it mean that we are starting something new, that there was nothing and now government started saying that, okay, let us do it, and so people start doing it? I mean, like, so it's not that way. I mean, chip designing, I mean, already was started in a small way at different places a few years ago, and there have been some success stories also. So recently, two processors were developed at IIT Madras and IIT Bombay. The Shakti was the first Indian processor, which was developed by a team led by Professor Kamakoti at IIT Madras. And Ajit was the name of the other processor developed by a team led by Professor Madhav Desai at IIT Bombay. These two are the first Indian processors. And the best part is, because I was a part of the post-silicon verification of Ajit, the best part is that the various space and defense projects, the ISRO and DRDOs, are planning to use these processors in their upcoming projects. So how does it help? I mean, somebody can always say that, okay, how good they are, what features they have, are they very fast, are they better than the latest ARM or i7 processors? So it is actually not that way. And before we get into the slide, one should always remember something that, okay, there may be very fancy, very fast, gigantic processors or devices available. What we are looking for is a solution. So what the Indian space and defense agencies have done is that, not that everywhere you require a very fast or a very professional processor. You require a solution. I mean, like, so these two processors provide a solution which is totally Indian. So there is no question of anything being hijacked, anything being broken. I mean, like data being transferred somewhere. And there is we are totally self-reliant. And there are, in fact, I was also a part of this team, so I know that there are multiple projects which are going to be built across these two processes. In fact, if you remember 9/11, I mean, when those terrorists came into India via the sea route. So after that, the government started an initiative that all the fishermen which go out into the sea, they would be given a GPS device, which is registered with the government. And using that device, the location of all the ships and boats inside the Indian sea territory will be monitored. And also to increase self-reliance or reduce the dependence on other countries, India has set up its own GPS system. So there is a set of satellites that India sent up in the sky, and they're setting up their own GPS system. Because GPS has a problem that when you depend on somebody else's GPS, then the accuracy is dictated by the person providing the GPS services. And many times for defense or some mission critical applications, that may not be possible. So India is setting up its own GPS device. So while we were setting up satellites over there, we wanted a chip that would go into a small mobile handset kind of a device, which the fishermen could carry and they could be located. So the name of that chip is Navik. It is some navigational ASIC or made in India something. So I don't have the full form. So this chip device provides GPS facilities in handheld devices. Now this chip actually has also been designed at IIT Bombay. In fact, the first step out has come up. I mean, it has just reached IIT, and from the next week, we are going to start the post silicon verification of this device. I mean, like, so what I want to say is that there are lots of applications which we are not aware of, and there are lots of things which are already being done. Only thing what the government now wants is that this thing should not be in the domain only of IITs or BARC or some big government agencies or defense lab, research lab, but anybody or everybody who feels he can do one should come up and do it, because the government wants to actually set up 100 unicorns in the next 5 years. Now further, because whenever I talked about this scheme and I was very enthusiastic and I talked with many people, the first question people ask me is, we don't have a fab, so how can we, what will we do with our chip designs, or how can we do chip designing? So, because, and that's true, I mean, we don't really have fabs. So the question that people ask, or the question that comes to you, anybody's mind, is if we don't have a fab, how could we do semiconductor design? Well, that question is not wrong, but this is half truth, I mean, because that is really not required. So if you don't have fabs, but to be a chip designing company, we actually don't have to have a fab. The concept is a fabless chip company. In fact, most of the chip companies from which everybody buys their catalog products, I mean, a company like Texas Instruments or maybe AMD, I mean, it is one of the biggest processors for computers. I mean, like Qualcomm, the biggest thing in mobile computing, NVIDIA graphics, Apple, companies like Rambus, which are into memory, MediaTek. There are many companies, I mean, like, which we know them for their semiconductor design or chips, but all these companies are fabless in the sense they only design, develop chips, and then they get them manufactured outside. So, and the companies which manufacture or fabricate these chips are called as semiconductor fabs. So most of the well-known fabs are TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, Global Foundries, UMC. These are TSMC and UMC is based in Taiwan, Global Foundries probably in China. So what happens is all these big companies, they design or develop the chips and get them manufactured outside. So in fact, the companies we know, like something like AMD is also a fabless semiconductor company. So the model that we are going to discuss, or the model that we are discussing, is something similar, that we will design our own chips for specific applications, but we will get them manufactured outside. Now, going beyond semiconductor companies and chip design, there is something which is called as IP. I mean, so it is not true that you have to design a complete chip and be a semiconductor company. So there are companies which only provide IP. I mean, so what is an IP? So IP is a soft version of a chip which is sold in the soft format to different companies, and people can use this as a building block to design a bigger or a better chip. One of the most famous IP companies in the world is ARM, because we all use ARM processors. ARM is a well-known company, but best part is ARM doesn't have its own chip. ARM only designs or develops processor cores in various configurations with various peripherals, and they've got an infinite number of variations of that, various speeds. And then they sell these ARM cores to others. So if you take a company like Qualcomm or NVIDIA, they would embed an ARM processor inside their chip, and then they would give the whole chip as a solution. So in fact, all the mobile chips or most of the chips that we see around us actually have an ARM core inside. So now if you take it, if you look at ARM is not a fabless semiconductor company also, it's only an IP company. So what I mean to say is, in semiconductor design, there are a variety of opportunities, which does not mean that every time the end product will be a end product will be a silicon. I mean, like, and simple examples of simple IP is like you create an IP for a USB port or a RAM controller, a flash controller, a Ethernet, or even a serial port or something, and these are in huge demand. Or because you people are from the automobile side, I mean, you just design your own CAN bus controller and sell it as an IP, or make your own CAN bus controller chip, and that can be used in various applications. So having or not having a fab is not the solution. So you can have a fab and make silicon, or you can be a fabless company and get it developed outside, or you can just create IP and sell it to fabless semiconductor companies or full semiconductor companies. While we are talking of chip design opportunities, I'm presenting here a very simplified design flow of how a chip is designed. In fact, this is so simplified that any chip that is designed will have to go through these building blocks. So the first thing that one needs to know when he gets into chip design is the concept. I mean, he should have an application area, or he should decide, I mean, what kind of a chip he wants to make. So I was giving an example, say we decide to develop a chip for CAN controller, I mean, because that is used in all vehicles. So maybe the sales team, the management, or some electrical engineers can come up and give an idea that let us develop a CAN controller. So once you decide on that, you create a product requirement document. So you take help from your marketing team, the customers, and you decide that, okay, this is the CAN controller that it should look like. So the people involved over here may not be very technical, I mean, like, but then they know the market and they would decide that this is the chip that we should develop. So the next step that comes up is setting up the chip specifications. So now here you require subject matter experts, so people who can actually understand electrical engineering and who can understand CAN controllers. And then an engineering requirement document is created, a design review is done, and then all the experts sit together and say that, okay, if you want these specifications, probably we can do this for you. So this is where the domain experts come into picture. So the block number 2 is domain experts. The block number 3 is the actual design phase, the electrical design phase of the device or the chip. So here you design a system architecture block diagram. So basically design an architecture, then you draw block diagram, then maybe you draw a schematic, you do the complete system design. And then somewhere using simulation tools, you also validate the concept that, okay, does this work like a CAN controller? Because CAN controllers may have some protocol analyzers or something. So you would figure out a way that you would actually draw the block diagram, you would draw the circuit diagram, and then you would validate that, okay, this schematic or this circuit diagram is going to give us the CAN controller that we are looking for. Then you go to block number 4. So here, once the design is done on paper, I mean, like, or the schematic is ready, Then there would be a team that would do the actual hardware verification, designing that, okay, does it work at the speeds? Will it work on the technology that we are targeting? They will do a functional modeling. They would do a simulation. They would do a timing verification. Timing verification is actually a very intricate part of chip designing, and actually it's the soul of chip designing. But that is something that is totally hidden behind. So part number 4 is where actual hardware engineers, the domain experts and the hardware experts would come in and actually design the whole chip and functionally model it, simulate it, verify the timings, and they say, yes, this can work. So now once you go into fabrication of the chip, you have to decide on a vendor, who's going to design your chip. And there are various technologies, when you're doing a chip design, say somebody says that the latest Intel processor is 3 nanoseconds, 3 nanometers, but that doesn't mean that all chips being designed in the world are working on 3 nanometers. So you find a vendor and you figure out that what kind of a technology parameter you require. And then you talk to the vendor and he's going to give a target library that he will tell his rules, design rules. And DRC check is that what we call it. And then he's going to give his library, on which you are going to synthesize the chip. So synthesis is an in-between process in which the actual design chip or the electrical circuit is connected to something which is very closer to the way silicon is going to work. So here, again, we are going to do a validation that, okay, does our functionality work on the target library? Now, once that is done, then we go to the actual physical design. So actually, this is now what we really would think of as a chip design, that they're on silicon. So assume that silicon is kind of a PCB on which you're putting all the different electrical parts. So you do a layout and floor planning of the chip. Once he has fabricated the chip, he's going to package it and then he's going to give it to you back for post-silicon verification. So what happens is you get a batch of the first batch of about 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 chips. And then you actually would have made some circuits, PCBs or systems in which you put the chips and I physically check them whether they're doing the function, and then you go for a production lot. So this is a simplified chip design flow. All chips, actually it is very complex, but I made it simple so that all chips go into this flow. And this is where the different kind of domain expertise is required. So physical design engineer is very different from a hardware design engineer. A hardware design engineer is a very different from a verification engineer. And a verification and a hardware engineer and the physical engineer is very different from a system designer. So all these people, all those expertise is required block by block in the whole design, and then you get a chip finally. So what are the business opportunities if somebody wants to do something of this kind? So one, IP licensing. I feel this is the simplest opportunity which can be used by people, like that. So IP is the basic building block of a chip. The opportunity here is to create reusable and reconfigurable blocks across technology. So as I said, maybe CAN bus itself, so you could create an infinite number of IPs for CAN bus and put them in the market, and lots of people would be there to use them, for different applications. Then customize IP or an IC, that is an ASIC or an ASIC. ASIC is an application specific integrated circuit. So this is actually a complete chip, that you actually design a chip, but this chip is not a catalog product. This is a customized product which will do a specific applications. So for example, if you do something for an RFID or at a very simple level, you just design a chip to do the function that a mouse does, the mouse that you use every day, or maybe a chip for Wi-Fi. So this would be an application specific chip which will do a specific application and nothing more. Then IC products are catalog products. So the ICs that you buy from the market, or you go to a company site like Infineon or Texas Instruments or Analog Devices, and then you Atmel or Microchip, and then you buy some standard products. So you can have your own standard products. So these are catalog products which you sell as a complete device. Going beyond board products, you can design chips to create your own models. So as I said, so suppose if somebody wants to make an RFID, they can sell those RFIDs as a complete product. So he can create a chip. He can go through the whole process and create a chip, then integrate that into a plastic card, write the necessary software, and he can create a board product. So you can always create your own product using your own custom design chip. So depending upon the market that you look at, so as I said, if you take that chip Navik, so Navik is nothing but a custom IP. So it is going to do a specific function. It is going to work with the satellites that India has sent up, and it is going to work in the Indian situation for specifically giving GPS and location solutions to the people who are there out, I mean, like in the sea. So Navi could be in custom IP, or if you take the processes that IIT is developed, I mean the Ajit and Shakti, so they could be called as catalog level IC products. Or if space or defense, or if somebody wants to use that as an IP core into their own product, then the core for the Shakti or Ajit processor could be IP licensed also. So depending upon what you want to do, there's a huge variety, and it can, on the case to case basis, we actually have to discuss and figure out that what is exactly happening or how it is to be done. I mean, like, so, but in general, these are the 4-5 kind of business opportunities that there are there. And if you look at domains, I mean, these are very generic. I mean, it's not limited to that. So smartphones is a big domain because we don't have smartphones which are developed or designed in India. Medical electronics, and typically medical probes is a big way, because we all know that when COVID came up, ventilators were in a shortage. There are lots of other machines, I mean, like X-rays, I mean, like, because we all use analog X-rays, and now is the time for digital X-rays. Then you have so many medical probes, I mean, for monitoring oxygen, monitoring blood pressure, monitoring heart rate, even sonography or whatnot, I mean, like, or even X-rays, I mean, like. Then typically taking something from the field in which KPIT does most of its work. I mean, EV charging stations are coming up in a huge way. I mean, the way it has been projected that EV charging stations, there's a requirement of millions of them across the country. So all the system that go into an EV charging system, there is an infinite application for, or infinite opportunity for developing chips in that systems. Then solar systems, solar energy systems, should have been, that's a spell mistake. So because solar energy, again, in fact, is coming up in a big way. So all the back-end electronics required to harness this energy once behind the panel, there is a big opportunity in developing chips, ASICs, to do that kind of a function. Another hot topic in current scenario is the home and industrial IoT. So home and industrial IoT sensors typically is a big topic for semiconductor design. So if you look at all these above, we'll find that all the chips and devices used in all the above are imported mostly from China, Taiwan, and semiconductor companies based in Europe or USA. We don't have anything of our own. And an interesting point is that almost all the fabs are based in China and Taiwan. So finally, 80% of the chips used in the world have their origins in East Asia, primarily China and Taiwan. And with the current political scenario, that creates a big problem for all the countries, and specifically India. So kind of things that you can do, I mean, like, so as I have mentioned this earlier also. So you can design, develop systems, SOCs, ASICs. So this is infinite. You can develop the application-oriented working prototypes for IPs. You can do proof of concept-oriented research and development of ASICs and FPGAs. This is what most of the IITs will be getting into. So they will be developing through. So earlier, what they used to do is they would just do some research, create a paper, and then leave it at it. Now, what they're planning is that they will not only do research, but they will come up with the actual silicon model of the device, and then sell that technology or pass on that technology to somebody who's really going to use it. And as I said, the opportunities could be simple processor, peripheral, medical probes, analog front ends. The list is endless. So I mean, if we keep on discussing, we can take another 1 hour discussing this only. Why the list is endless? Because we don't have anything of our own. So everything that we want or everything that we use can be designed and developed in-house. So there is the requirement just doesn't end. I mean, like. So the technical domains from the electronic engineer's point of view, in which chips can be designed. Now, this is important for any electrical engineers, electronic engineers who have a look at this slideshow or the whatever information I'm giving. So analog VLSI is a separate kind of specialized field for developing chips. So simple instrumentation amplifier, operational amplifiers, ADCs, DAC. ADC, DAC would be a mixed signal design, sorry. Then digital VLSI. Digital VLSI is almost most of us know. So processors, peripherals, etc. come under this, memories. So mixed signal design. Mixed signal design is where you have an analog front end and then you have a the digital part. So there is a chip in which this chip is half analog, half digital. And this is a very tricky design. It's not all that simple. So doing a complete analog VLSI chip or a complete digital design is a relatively simple thing, but mixed signal has its own problems, issues, and it is very tricky. Then the next domain is RF, because if you see that nowadays everything is wirelessly connected. So everywhere there is Wi-Fi, and lots of applications have these antennas and Wi-Fi. So at the front end of every antenna, I mean, there has to be an RF circuitry, LNA, and then some amplifier, and there's a standard building block. I mean, like, so RF is everywhere. So RF chips, I find, have got the maximum potential in today's world. I mean, they are difficult, and RF is a tough domain, but they are almost everywhere. I mean, we never know that, but if you just look around us, and you'll find that at least there are 15 to 20 RF chips in the room that we are sitting. I mean, like, so that's a big domain. MEMS is something that is not thought of much in our country. It is micro machine systems. I mean, like, so this is where you are using CMOS technology or the chip design technology to create mechanically engineered micro machine systems. I mean, like, so typically we have heard about those small robotic probes, which they put inside your arteries or something, and they put in a stent, or the robo goes and repairs something inside. Now, if you deeply look into that, so what is that robo or that small probe that is being put in? It is a mechanical system actually. There could be a motor, that could be clippers, there could be moving parts, and there could be so many things. There could be springs. I mean, the question is, how do you machine all those small parts and how do you put them together? So micro machining of these kind of systems is done using CMOS design technology, and these are called MEMS. And in fact, the best example of MEMS, which we have never used luckily, but we always see around us, I mean, like, is the airbag. The accelerometer or the trigger which triggers the airbag if there is a crash is a MEMS system. I mean, like, so basically MEMS systems are machined systems, or they're mechanical systems which are very small, and they're designed using, or they're fabricated using, or they're produced using CMOS technology. I mean, like, and sensors and probes. I mean, so MEMS is something which is actually very interesting. I mean, if somebody gets into MEMS, that has got infinite applications. I mean. So what are the opportunities? I'll quickly wind up over here. So as mentioned earlier, every application is an opportunity. But just to give you an idea, let us take the latest keywords that float around nowadays. One is renewable energy generation, carbon points, reduce pollution, greenhouse gases, all that stuff. I mean, like, so solar energy, wind energy, hydrogen, and I don't know, ethanol, methanol. I mean, there's so many things which are coming up. So solar, wind, hydrogen, etc. is going to be used for generating energy. And then the applications using this, I mean, the most popular application that is very popular nowadays, or is the keyword, is electrical vehicles. Then solar application, a very simple application that I've given is a solar pump, I mean, because a solar pump provides, so the government doesn't have to subsidize the electricity bills of the farmers, and they can just use the solar pump anywhere. They don't have to even carry electric wires over there, or then they're not worried about power cuts and all that stuff also. So if you take renewable energy, solar, wind, hydrogen power, or if you talk about electric vehicles, you take solar applications, solar energy. What is common to all of them? The common is battery power, because the power that is going to be harnessed has to be stored. And once it is stored, it is to be then later used. So if you take an electrical vehicle, the power is stored inside the electrical vehicle, and the electrical vehicle uses that power and then drives itself. I mean, like, or if you take solar farms, so what do they do? There are two kinds of solar farm. One is online. So what it does is, it will just take the energy, you invert it, or using an inverter, and just connect it to the grid. So it's an online solar farm, that the energy that is being generated is directly being connected to the grid and is being used. But if you take a simple solar application, like you have a solar tent for the army somewhere in Galwan Valley. So what happens after the sun goes away? So what they have to do is, they have to store the energy in batteries, and then they'll use it when the sun is not there. So battery storage of energy is a very important factor. I mean, same thing happens with wind energy. So if you only look at these keywords and then look at battery power, for storing and usage both. So it is all about storing power generated in batteries and using stored power from batteries. So now coming down to our, how do we link it to our chip designing thing? So we are not getting into this. So inverters and converters are the basic building blocks. As basic building blocks are the integral part of all these kind of renewable energy sources and EVs. So if you take inverters and converters, they come in many topologies, size and specifications, because if you check the catalog of fabless companies, we'll see that they have got a huge number of catalog products for these inverters and converters, because the voltage may vary, the frequency may vary, the power may vary. There are n number of parameters. So just thinking of this renewable energy and battery storage of energy as a application, it opens up a large opportunity in developing devices and chips for these applications. And the best part is these chips are not very complex. They can be easily designed. So you don't require, the architecture is simple, and actually they can be done very easily with the available tools. Similarly, if you look around us, one thing that we use every day is RFIDs. We have biometric sensor, thumb sensor, iris sensor. As I mentioned, RF front ends, camera sensors. Almost everywhere you have cameras, like medical proof. So, and all these applications are not very complex, and actually somebody can make his own products also by designing the chips inside and customizing them fully. And as I said, process IP creation. There will always be an infinite market for developing processors and peripheral IP and selling it in the market. So I'll just take a very small example and wind it up. So if you have a solar EV charging station, for example, which many people are planning to come up with, and some people have also thought of it. So on the input side, the charging station takes power from the power grid or the solar panels. On the output side, it can power the EV. The take is wrong. It can power the EV from the power grid, the solar, or the battery. So a EV charging station would look like this. That there is a power coming from the power grid, AC to DC converter, and you give it to the DC grid. So if there is an EV connected, it will charge it, or if the EV is not connected, the battery bank at the local station can be kept fully charged. So in case if there is no solar power or even the AC power, vehicles can be charged. Or it can take power from the solar panels, convert it to DC, give it to the DC grid. You can online charge the vehicle, or you can connect you can charge the battery. And in case when AC power or DC power, the solar power is not there, the EV can be charged from the battery bank. So you just see that, there's so much of requirement of various kinds of AC-DC converter, DC-DC converters, DC-DC inverters, over here. This market, I feel, is huge, and the way renewable energy is coming up, this is going to be a prime thing that everybody is going to require. So EV chargers, this is just a small description of EV chargers. They come in 3 types: level 1, level 2, level 3. And level 3 chargers are used in charging stations that supply currents ranging from 100 amperes to 800 amperes. Tesla uses 800 amperes, and they're going for a 1600 ampere design also. So this information itself tells us that the specifications of converters and inverters required in each charger is different. And from a chip designer's view, you could come up with a catalog of 100 plus devices customized as per requirements. You could buy some IP from outside and even make these chips fancy by adding intelligence, communication ports, load sharing, online payment, and you can do infinite things with that. So I feel there is a huge opportunity if somebody just looks around, and you can always figure out what chip you want to design. And luckily the government is giving us incentives money in terms of incentives, is providing incubation facilities, is providing tools and everything. And I think so it's going to be great fun designing chips, and India is going to be a superpower in that very soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mehta, for taking out the time to be with us today. Next up, I would like to invite Professor R. Saravanan to throw light on solar cooling technology. I'm glad to say that Professor Saravanan, Director, Center for Entrepreneurship Development, Anna University, Chennai, is a wellspring of knowledge with over 25 years of experience in the field of energy conversion in buildings, solar heating, cooling systems, and combined power and cooling systems. He holds a PhD in solar cooling from IIT Madras and has published 68 international journal papers and presented around 130 papers in both national and international conferences. Professor Saravanan has carried out many research projects for various Government of India departments and participated in the Marie Curie Research Fellowship Program sponsored by EU. Well, the list of accomplishments is quite too long, so without any further ado, let me invite Professor Saravanan.
Hello everyone, I am Professor Saravanan, working at Department of Mechanical Engineering, Anna University. Currently, I am holding the position of Director, Center for Entrepreneurship Development, where we have created a Maker's Lab, where the students can come with an idea, convert their idea into prototype, then we help them to start their career in a potential startups. We handhold them in a multiple way till they go with a viable, minimum viable product, and they can be incubated our Atal Innovation Center at Anna University. So this presentation is about the topic of this KPIT Sparkle is on mobility and energy for transport future. So here today I am talking about the thermal energy transport in a large industrial complex where you can do with a minimal greenhouse gas emission and also without damaging the environment, what type of things we can do. So the topic of my presentation is on absorption heat pumps and heat transformer for thermal energy transport. So today we'll be seeing about, just I'm going to introduce the topic, then I'll be discussing about types and performance of both absorption heat pumps and the heat transformer. Then we're talking about what is the current status of both these systems for high temperature, medium temperature, low temperature heat applications. How this heat is transported from point A to point B, where the industrial applications are there. The industrial application could be boiling, heating, cleaning, or material processing, or of course you can also do it for water purification. So you'll be seeing some of these industrial applications where this upgraded heat is utilized. And finally, summary and conclusion. So when you look at the industrial sector is the worldwide largest heat consumer. So the heat can be consumed in 3 different levels. One is at low temperature heat, which is below 150 degrees centigrade, which could be used for boiling, pasteurization, cleaning, drying, washing, some of these applications. Where you have a medium temperature heat which varies from 150 to 400 degrees centigrade. Some of the applications are distilling, nitrate melting, and compression based systems. And of course, you can use a heat at a high temperature which is above 400 degrees centigrade for material transformation process. And what are the types of percentage of this heat used in the industry is given in this figure. So the worldwide is about 20% of the total energy consumption goes for heating applications. See, most of this heat is about 83% is obtained by the direct combustion of fossil fuel, leading to large emission of greenhouse gas emissions. So which contributes about 24% of the global CO2 emissions only through heat application. So if you find a way to reduce this greenhouse emission, so we can able to reduce the carbon footprint from the industrial sectors in line with the international agreement like Diwali agreement where the India is a signatory. So the heating industries also generate enormous amount of greenhouse gas emission. So it is our aim to reduce this greenhouse emission so that we are able to meet this international agreement. And we look at the heat pump technology. And the heat pump is the only technology which has sustainable energy in the industries. So there are 2 types of heat pumps which can be commonly used. One is a compression-based heat pump technology and absorption-based technology. In the compression-based technology, as you can see, the compression-based technology is a work-driven heat pump. So you require electrical energy to operate this heat pump, where the heat from the source at THS is pumped to the T superheat at a particular temperature where you require application. By lifting the temperature of delta T, this delta T may be about 30 or 40 degrees centigrade over and above THS. Suppose the THS is about 70 degrees centigrade, we can able to apply to 110 degrees centigrade. Suppose your TH is 150, you can able to upgrade to 190 or 200 degrees centigrade with the use of this work-driven heat pump. But please note that these heat pumps require electrical energy for operation So any electrical energy generated through the thermal power plant, as in the case of India, we have about 65% of our electrical energy comes from thermal power. Our carbon footprint or certified energy reduction, or the amount of CO2 released per kg of per kilowatt of energy production is varies from 0.9 to 1.2 kg of CO2 per kilowatt hour. So by operating this type of work-based heat pump, we are also releasing higher greenhouse gas emission compared to it may be lower compared to the direct combustion of fuels, but still you are releasing the greenhouse emission to the atmosphere. On the other hand, if you look at absorption heat pump technology, it is a heat pump, heat-driven technology. So you operate the heat pump with a higher source temperature, so that you can do the same exact temperature lift between your heat source to the requirement. Whether you can have a type 1 and type 2 heat pump or a heat transformer, but in the case of type 2 heat pump or a heat transformer, the input energy required at a heat source temperature itself, where you can able to transport the heat from THS to TSU with the same delta T temperature lift. By using this, in the case of your work-driven heat, the heat exchange takes place between the two temperature levels, whereas in the absorption heat pump technology, the exchange of heat at the 3 different temperature levels. So what is the working fluid? Because any systems, the performance depends upon the cycle configuration and working fluid. The most commonly working fluid in the case of absorption heat pump and heat transformer is water lithium bromide mixes. So these mixers, you can have a single effect system, which is simplest and the basic configuration, but they are limited with the temperature lift. So the COP of a single effect system, regardless to your driving potential temperature level. So you can able to improve this performance of this single effect system, either by increasing the efficiency of the heat pump, or you can increase your temperature lift while maintaining the COP with or without much reduction, or very small reduction in your COP of the system. So you build a multi-effect concept to enhance this energy efficiency. So you can go for a double effect or a triple effect heat pump, which is more energy efficient compared to single effect system, whereas the COP of the single effect system could be about 1.7. Even this COP seems to be low, but if you look at your compression-based work heat pump, where you have to factor into account of your source to site energy reduction, which could be about 0.2, then your compressive heat pump and your absorption heat pump will match on the COP, particularly on the double effect system, where the COP is slightly higher than 2. So which will be on par with your compression-based heat pump systems if we consider your source to site reduction. And this double effect and double lift concept also used to increase your temperature lift in both these cases. But when you look at the working fluid, for if you want to operate the heat pump above 90 degrees centigrade, you cannot use your water lithium bromide, ammonia water system may not be useful for high temperature heat pump application because of the high operating pressure, and also it is very close to critical point of ammonia, which is about 132.3 degrees centigrade. So for high temperature heat application, one should go for water lithium bromide system. So this is a basic simple combination of a single effect and double effect water lithium bromide systems. So here you have the solubility limit, or at a higher temperature, there could be some problem of corrosiveness towards the metallic materials like carbon, steel, copper, and other things. So you have a limitation on your driving heat source temperature and your temperature lift. At a delivery temperature of 90 degrees centigrade, a driving heat source about 180 degrees centigrade, you can achieve a temperature lift about 40 Kelvin with a COP of 1.44 to 1.75 with the single efficiency almost it's around 60 to 65%. But if you have a delivery temperature 100 degrees centigrade, your COP may be on bar, but you can be able to achieve the lower temperature lift. So you have to get a compromise between the temperature lift and the COP. If you want to keep the same COP, but you can have higher delivery temperature, but with the temperature lift of 30 Kelvin. But if you want to have a slightly lower delivery temperature, 90 degrees centigrade for the same heat source temperature at the same COP, you can increase the temperature lift to 40 Kelvin. That is the advantage. You can play with the temperature lift and the COP in these systems. But if you want to improve the COP more than one, in case of ammonia water systems, one can going for generator absorber heat exchange systems instead of double effect or triple effect systems because of very high pressure. In the case of generator absorber heat exchange systems, you are exchanging partial amount of heat rejected from the absorber to operate your generator at a higher temperature. By doing this, you are limiting your generator heat input, so thereby increasing your COP of the system. A gas system, you can be able to get the COP about 1.5. The temperature lift is about 25 to 30 degree centigrade. But it is not possible in a single effect system. So that is the advantage of your gas system. And I will show you a gas system which has been installed in a pharma industry for a combined heating and cooling application, where they used a gas technology in order to reduce your input to the systems, where thereby you will get both the output. That is a cooling load at about 435 kilowatt at a particular flow rate about 7 degrees centigrade, and a heating load about 1000 kilowatt at 34 metric cube per hour at 58 degrees centigrade. So the energy input to the system is a renewable energy based system. So we used a biomass fired boiler at about 4.5 bar at a steam flow rate of 1200 kg per hour. So we will be able to get the combined COP is more than 2, with the heating COP of 1.5 and cooling COP of 0.5. So this system is proved the concept on industrial environment, where the owner has to able to get back their investment within a span of 1 year, because earlier they used two different technology to produce cooling. They are having a vapor compression chiller with R134 as a working fluid. For heating, they had a separate boiler. So what we have done is we used the same boiler to operate the system to deliver the two different output at the matching conditions. So thereby one can able to demonstrate the heat transport by different industrial application using the same system. And the another advantage of the system is you need not require a high temperature system to operate, but you can able to operate the system with a bit lower temperature heat input. Suppose you have a fractal collector which is generating about 90 degree or 85 degree centigrade hot water, still you can able to operate the system for a higher heat pump and also for a chill water application. What we call as a combination of a single effect and off effect systems, because these systems are slightly complicated in structure, but it is easy to operate. This is consists of a 7-phase changing heat exchanger and a 3 solution heat exchanger to operate it. And the arrow mark indicated heat input and heat output systems. The advantage of the system is it can be easily adopted for solar energy applications. So it depends upon the solar input. During the morning hours, the system can operate as a off-effect system. During the peak hour, that it's from morning 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock, when the solar energy is at the peak, you can operate as a single effect system. So you can have a flexibility in operating the system, depends upon your heat source temperature. So using a hot water at about 88 degrees centigrade, we can able to produce a chilled water at 7 degrees centigrade, and you can also generate hot water at 60 degrees centigrade from the same system. So these type of systems can be integrated in the district cooling network, where in the winter you can use it for a hot water demand, in the summer you can use it for a cooling water, chilled water. By doing this, the single system can operate the cooling demand or a heating demand for both the seasonal variation, thereby reducing the overall greenhouse emissions and operating the system at a much lower temperature. So the temperature drop could be as a function of your temperature lift. So this can be managed. So these are the various commercial products in water lithium bromide heat pump technology. There are different companies, they are selling this technology, but you can choose and use it. Depends upon your heat source. The heat source could be a waste heat or a turbine exhaust steam or a geothermal or a solar. The waste heat temperature could be about 30 to 50 degrees centigrade or 30 to 60 degrees centigrade, which you can upgrade to delivered heat more than 80 degrees centigrade by using this system. With the COP ranges from 1.65 to 1.8. But when you look at the whole system, the whole systems are giving a payback period is not maximum of 2 years or 2.5 years. So the advantage is you can have the single systems up to 70 megawatt of heat transport with about 40% heat recovery ratio. Either you can buy these demonstrated systems. So this tells you the advantage of this heat transport, thermal energy transport in a large scale within the industry complex, or you can use it for the district heating network for the major cities. But the same system can also be used in the cooling district cooling network also. So now we move on to the heat transformer. The heat transformer is a type of a heat pump, but it can operate at a lower temperature level. That means you can operate the system instead of operating at heat input at 90 degrees centigrade. You can operate the heat input at 60 degrees centigrade, but you can upgrade the heat from 60 to 90 degrees centigrade using these systems. That means low temperature heat transport can be uptime or upgraded using this system. So the efficiency of the systems, it depends upon the temperature limit, so that you can able to achieve the higher, the COP is not as good as your heat pump because your input are two different places. It is half of your heat pump COP. The COP of the system is close to 0.5 with the temperature limit normally restricted to less than 50 degrees centigrade. Higher COP and larger temperature lifts are possible when you go for an advanced cycle configuration in this system. So in order to increase the temperature lift, researchers has tried different types of technologies. So that means if you go for a temperature lift to more than 100 degrees centigrade, you can go for a triple effect absorption heat transformer and double effect heat transformer, but the COP comes from 0.6 to 0.2 or 0.3. So you have to choose between the temperature lift and the COP. Okay, so to improve the COP, you have to limit the temperature lift, but you can have an increased heat recovery. So you have to go for a double effect absorption heat transformer, as in this case. Worldwide, there is a lot of heat transformer installation is happening, mainly in Europe and Asia. There are mainly in China and Japan. This heat transport is taking place. In India, there are few industries they adopted this heat transfer, particularly on the food processing industries and pharma industries, where the people is achieved the temperature lift more than 50 Kelvin. And we have tested the heat transformer for water purification also. So where the temperature lift could be used to distillate the seawater to get the pure water. So they are used to the same water lithium bromide system with the heat output about 2 kilowatt, with the temperature lift is about 25 degrees centigrade. What we have tested is in order to make a compactness of the system, we housed the high temperature components, low temperature components in a single cell. So that means your generator and condenser in a single cell and evaporator and absorber in another single cell, where the heat transfer takes place by using a falling film technology. And by operating with a specific heat input, say about 2 kilowatt, we are able to produce about 1.5 kg per hour of distilled water mass flow rate in the experimental system. So, and this type of heat transfer technology is also commercially available. There are a lot of manufacturers built and operate these systems where your delivered heat is also about more than 80 degrees centigrade, and the COP is on the range of 0.48 to 0.45. But the advantageous system is, unlike like a heat pump where you require higher temperature heat input, here we can operate these systems at a temperature, even with the waste hot water at about 60 degrees centigrade or 70 degrees centigrade, hot water could be operate to upgrade this temperature to 110 to 120 degrees centigrade. With the delivery capacities, single unit can be about 8,000 kilowatt. Or you can combine the 2 or 3 units and transport higher heat transport for the larger distance. So to conclude, we have seen both this absorption heat pump, you call it as a type 1 heat pump or a type 2 heat pump as a heat transformer, to transport large scale thermal energy within the industry or across for the district cooling or district heating network. Under the absorption heat pump, we have a different types of single effect and double effect using water lithium technologies available, which could be a direct fired using natural gas or biomass operated steam operated cycle or a hot water system from solar or exhaust gas of indirect fired systems. Now, but these systems are limited with a maximum heat related to 100 degrees centigrade with a temperature lift up to 50 Kelvin. The thermal COP of the absorption heat pump varies from 1.65 to 2, typically about 1.7 in the case of a double effect system. A single unit 70 megawatt heating capacity has been available in the market. It is well proven. In the case of absorption heat transformer, the maximum heat delivery temperature can go up to 185 degrees centigrade with a temperature limit up to 50 Kelvin. But the COP is only about 0.4 to 0.48, and the heating capacity up to 8 megawatt is available as a single unit. But in the two types, there is a challenge. One is on the limitation on the water lithium bromide as a working pair, because at a higher temperature, there is a solubility problems and the crystallization issue will be there. So this has been solved. And you have to add a lot of corrosion inhibitors in order to protect your metallic characteristics of materials and thermal stability. You should look into when the system is going to operate at a delivery temperature more than 100 degrees centigrade. And also, the system compactness has to be studied. So nowadays, the people are using the plate twin heat exchanger technologies to reduce the volume footprint of the unit. And there are commercial systems that are available with plate type heat exchangers for both the generator and absorber. So that challenge can be overcome by using this advanced heat exchanger technology. So in the future, these units can be operated with natural working fluids as a hero operated system. So both the things will lead to low total equivalent warming impact compared to combustion based heating solutions or a vapor compression based heat pumps. So absorption heat pumps and heat transformer can be an alternate solution to overcome the fossil fuel based heating technology and also the vapor compression based heat technology to achieve the low TEWI for these whole systems. With this, I conclude my presentation. Thank you. And I like to thank KPIT Sparkle for providing this opportunity. And this is one of the events which kindles a lot of interest among students, particularly on the mobility structure. And a lot of students are interested to work on this concept of electric vehicles, fuel cell based operated systems. So they gain this lot of knowledge and interaction between the fellow students, and also they have a very good mentors from KPI to guide them to develop this product. I guess all the students participating in this event, best of luck and have a great future. Let us build a strong startup network community based on the energy for mobility sector. Thank you. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Wow, that was quite enlightening. Thank you so much for your remarks, sir. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call someone who completed his BSME in 2000 with highest distinction from Purdue University and gained a doctorate in 2005 after finishing his MSME in 2004 from Stanford University. His expertise lies in diesel engine fuel efficiency and thermal management via variable valve actuation and cylinder deactivation. Connected and automated Class 8 trucks, connected and automated agricultural machines, hybrid power strains and energy storage systems, and natural gas engine systems and control. And from his immense knowledge, Dr. Greg Shaver would explain model-based system and control design of commercial vehicle powertrain to us. I'm sure we can't wait to listen. Please take over.
Good evening. My name is Greg Shaver. It's my pleasure to present on my research as part of this exciting KPIT Sparkle event. Good evening. I will start my presentation now. So what I'm going to be talking about today is model-based system and control design of commercial vehicle powertrains. I'm a professor at the School of Mechanical Engineering at Purdue University and do a lot of my work at the Ray W. Herrick Labs, which is one of the laboratory facilities on the Purdue University campus. So a little bit about our research goals and approach before I get into some more details of individual projects. So really my focus and a big part of what I do at Purdue is to work with industry partners and other funding agencies to create challenging, interesting, relevant, career-launching research and learning opportunities for our students at Purdue, both graduate students and undergraduate students. And as you all probably know, we have students, both undergraduate and graduate students, that come from all over the world, including India and many other countries. And our goal from a research point of view, how I achieve that, that opportunity for student is through the development of cleaner, more efficient and safer commercial vehicles, largely in collaboration with our industry partners. Our approach is to focus on commercial vehicles and to use any one or more of the following model-based controls, connectivity, automation, and advanced powertrains. We balance or try to balance practice, modeling, and theory. So one of the things that we invest a lot of time, energy, and attention into to make the research more meaningful for our partners that are funding the work, but as well as the students that are working on it, is to develop and maintain robust, really, academia and industry leading experimental test beds. And so I'll describe a few of those in the coming slides. And the goal here really is for me to work with my colleagues and staff at Purdue to mentor and prepare industry ready graduate students and undergraduate students. We've got a number of different funders, some funding from Purdue directly, also from the U.S. Departments of Transportation, Department of Energy. We do a lot of work with and for Cummins and John Deere, Caterpillar, and Allison Transmission, just to name a few. So here are several examples of ongoing projects that I'll talk through. So the one here in the top left-hand corner is focused on heavy-duty diesel hybrid electric drivetrains. In this case, what we're doing is we're looking at a John Deere wheel loader application. So you can see the bucket here. This is obviously an off-road vehicle used for moving dirt, gravel, and other materials. And the goal here is to improve the fuel efficiency and reduce the fuel consumption and CO2 emissions by at least 10% by further downsizing the engine. So a wheel loader like this would normally have a 9-liter engine in it. And it's actually already offered for sale with an engine downsized to 6.8 liters. With partial electrification, but no energy storage, no battery. And so what we're focusing on in this U.S. Department of Energy focused project is, the benefits or potential merit of adding a battery, a lithium ion battery, as well as further downsizing the engine from 6.8 liters down to 4.5 liter engine size. And the idea is for the vehicle to still be able to do the same work that it would normally, to be able to move around and move dirt or other materials without compromise, but with that CO2 and fuel savings. And the merit proposition, or what we're trying to understand the potential merit of, is by introducing a battery into this hybrid electric drivetrain, and also an e-boosted or an electrically boosted downsized engine, now going from 9 liter to 6.8 liter, and then from 6.8 liter down to 4.5 liter. Can we achieve the work of the vehicle that's expected and save additional fuel through energy storage and through more efficient use of an IC engine in this application? So this project is one that involves John Deere, and this project is led by our friends and colleagues at the University of Wisconsin here in the United States. It's funded by the U.S. Department of Energy, and the part that Purdue is playing is leading the model-based algorithm development for both the engine and the supervisory level control of the powertrain. In the top right-hand corner, this describes a project that's co-funded by John Deere and Eaton, where what we're looking at here is, we're working with one of the latest and greatest engines from John Deere, a 13.6 liter engine that they're just now beginning to sell into the market, into larger vehicles, for instance, articulated dump trucks, combine harvesters, and tractors, just to name a few of the applications. And our goal here is to see how much more efficient we can make these engines to reduce fuel consumption and CO2 emissions through any one or more of the following technologies: sonar deactivation, EGR pumping, and other electrification of some of the engine functions. And it's a little bit of an eye chart, but what you can see in this under this torque curve here is that at low torques, low to moderate torques, and then moderate to high torques, there are some incumbent technologies shown here in black that are often used to try to allow the engine to operate efficiently while still working well together with the after treatment that's used to help clean up the gases that come out of the engine before they come out of the tailpipe so that they meet increasingly stringent exhaust regulations, both in the US and around the world. And the blue technologies are proposed or potential technologies that we're exploring the use of. And this involves doing experimental work at Purdue, at the Ray W. Herrick labs. And we're very excited about this. We just launched this project about 9 months ago. The project that's summarized in the bottom left-hand corner is one that we started with Allison about 9 months ago. We're also very excited about this project. And Allison Transmission is funding this. We're located in Indiana. Purdue is located in Indiana. And Allison Transmission its world headquarters is in Indianapolis, which is about an hour's drive from us. So given our focus on commercial vehicles and also their proximity to us and vice versa, they're also a natural partner for us in much the same way that Cummins and Deere are as well. For this project, what we're trying to do is understand and mitigate some driveline oscillation issues that newer types of vehicles sometimes impose on different components in the powertrain, including the transmission. So as vehicles drivetrains get more complex, as there's even more variety than there has been in the past, there are sometimes some resonant effects in the driveline that could lead to failures of different components. And so because the transmission is right there in the middle of the powertrain, we're working with Allison to help understand and mitigate some of those impacts. This effort also includes experimental work done on vehicles that we drive as part of testing. The bottom right-hand corner is a project that we've been working on for about 3 years with Cummins and close partnership with them. It's focused on natural gas engines. And so as you may know, there's the potential to reduce CO2 emissions from commercial vehicle engines just by moving or considering the use of fuels other than diesel. So as it turns out, for a certain amount of energy that you can release during combustion from a diesel fuel versus natural gas, the natural gas fuel will result in about 30% less CO2. So just by using natural gas, even if it's conventional natural gas from the ground, if you will, we can see a CO2 reduction. But these natural gas engines are not as power dense and are not able to create torque as well as diesel engines for a number of reasons. And we're trying to tackle that problem. So ideally, and I'm oversimplifying it a little bit, we're trying to get these natural gas engines to behave a little bit more like diesel so that we can get the other benefits of using a natural gas engine, including CO2 reductions, and also simplification of the after treatment. So instead of having to use a lean burn engine after treatment, we can use a three-way catalyst, and that allows us to reduce NOx at the tailpipe with less complex after treatment. And one way to think about the potential benefit here is, for an example cycle, this plot here shows a transient cycle CO2 and transient cycle NOx, and we want to move down and to the left in this plot, and this circle up here in the top right, corresponds to baseline, kind of today's best diesel engine powertrains for larger commercial vehicles in the US. And some of the work we've done already that I'll talk about on the next slide for diesel cylinder deactivation can reduce transient cycle CO2 and transient cycle NOx. There are some additional technologies that you can consider, like hybridization, and this is referring to hybrid electric powertrain hybridization that can further move you down and to the left. But then there's this red triangle here that is a possible place we could get to with high efficiency natural gas with simplified three-way catalyst after treatment. Some of the challenges, though, are around challenges you have with any SI engine that's running at stoichiometric fuel-air ratios, and that's mitigating NOx and avoiding the use of intake throttling to control the air coming into the engine. Valve train flexibility, VVA, variable valve actuation, and cylinder activation are the technologies that we're considering here. And some of these technologies are being used already in smaller gasoline-fueled passenger car engines. And so, some of the benefits there we expect to see here, but we have some additional challenges. And those include the fact that these commercial vehicle engines are operated at high loads almost all the time, whereas passenger cars are not. So some of those things that we need to take care of around knock mitigation are even more important and challenging in commercial vehicles. Another challenge is that the power density of the engine, the demand for that is much higher in a commercial vehicle than it is for a passenger car. So these are examples of current projects. I'll briefly talk about some previous examples of previous projects. Before I do, I forgot I had this come up. So this is actually the natural gas 6.7 liter Cummins engine in one of our test cells. And this device on top is a camless valve actuation system that is not meant to be production intent. It's not, but it allows us to emulate different valve profiles that production intent systems from our partners like Eaton are making. So 2 more slides here. I just want to go more high level of, talk about other work we've done recently. So we're very proud of this, a long-term effort that was funded primarily by Cummins, but also in part by Eaton and by the US Department of Energy. And this was focused on understanding what valve train flexibility and CDA could enable in advanced diesel engines for lower tailpipe emissions, particularly for NOx, and also lower fuel consumption and CO2 emissions. And this work, we're very proud to say, has helped affect and influence the development of new regulations by the California Air Resources Board and the US EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. So, the regulators see the need, and so too does the industry, of making these engines and the commercial vehicles that they're in cleaner and more efficient. And they want to be aggressive with technology, as an academic partner to the regulators and to the industry and other government agencies. We have an important role to play, whereby we can help understand, the merit potential of different technologies. And in this case, we found some significant merit to CDA, cylinder deactivation, and that information's been used to move ahead with new regulations. So we're very proud of that impact we had. And that included a lot of experimental work and simulation and control algorithm development work at Purdue. The project in the top right-hand corner is one that was funded by the Department of Energy. This was in close collaboration with Cummins. And what we were looking at here was the model-based algorithm development of the engine and after-treatment controls for natural gas engines that use three-way catalyst and that are implemented in plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. So the engines like that and powertrains like that are not available for in the market today, but they could be in the future. And so we were working on algorithms to deal with some of the challenges of that kind of implementation. The bottom left-hand corner is a summary of a project that we did with and for Caterpillar, in this case for marine engines that are lean burn and use natural gas. And the focus here was on developing robust MIMO, multiple input, multiple output controls to manage the heavy load changes that the engines like this and both marine and power gen applications that they see. So we need to manage the gas exchange so that we get the mixture and the composition inside the cylinder we want so that we have good combustion. That's a challenge during steady state operation. It's even more challenging during transient. So by including the coupling between the different inputs, we could directly affect like the fuel valve, the bypass valve, the throttle valve, the wastegate valve. Those are the things we can directly affect. We can be able to achieve dynamically air to fuel ratios, combustion timing and other characteristics of the engine function. If we ignore that coupling and we just kind of control one thing at a time with different actuators, as is typically done today, that's more limited. So we were able to demonstrate in this project by doing the coupled model-based control design, there was some additional benefits. The bottom left-hand corner summarizes a project we did with the US National Biodiesel Board to understand the impact of biodiesel in modern engines. And there's a lot of merit to the use of biodiesel to reduce the carbon footprint of the fuels that go in these types of engines. But there's also some control check changes that would need to be made, and we were able to demonstrate some of those. So 3 more quick projects here. I'm also, in addition, so a lot of my focus in my group with colleagues and students and staff at Purdue and in industry is focused on powertrain, but we also do vehicle level work around connectivity automation and lower carbon powertrains. So in the top left-hand corner, this is an example of one where we did work with and for John Deere, where we were looking at the automation or partial automation of the unloading process from a harvesting combine to a tractor-driven grain cart. And the idea here, with experiments done at Purdue as well, was to try to keep the combine harvesting corn or soybeans or wheat, whatever the grain is, keep it moving because it's often the most expensive machine and the most expensive to operate. So you don't want to stop it to unload. You want to keep it moving, and you drive along these tractor-driven grain carts. And over the course of a day, you may have 10 or more of these unloading events, and it's difficult and exhausting and hard to do in dusty and poorly lit conditions when you have two operators that are doing all this, managed positional changes between the combine here and the tractor-driven grain cart. And so what we did is we developed an automated system for unloading on the go, and we're very proud of that work. I've also led a project recently that we recently finished around truck platooning. So the idea here is you have one truck closely following the other to reduce the aerodynamic drag on both trucks. And what we demonstrated is that on hilly terrain, if you do truck platooning and you drive that front truck in an efficient way for the platoon, you could save up to 12.3% fuel savings and get improved gap control between the two trucks, even on challenging hilly terrain. And finally, this last project that I'll show, we worked with, on the bottom left-hand corner here, we worked with a startup company called ePower. And our focus here was to help both the startup company ePower and some of their investors understand what the impact in real world driving is of their prototype system. So we also have worked at the vehicle level around electrified powertrains. The last thing I want to say before I close is I just want to say, this is not me doing this. This is me enabling students to do this. And even that is not something I do on my own. So for some of these more complicated projects, that certainly those that are larger and involved experiments at Purdue, I work very closely with one of my colleagues, Dr. Eric Holloway, and as well as Ryan Thayer. And we really together mentor students to work on these projects. This is the current set of graduate students in the team, usually about 50-50 PhD and masters. I'm not showing the undergraduate students here, but we usually have between 3 and 6 undergraduates that work with us. And then all these students on the bottom here are former graduate students that I've worked with that have graduated either with a PhD or master's. And you can see about a little bit more than half of them, all of them highlighted in red here. Now, many of them choose to go work at and get encouraging offers for employment at companies that fund our research and collaborate with us. I also have a couple of faculty, have a couple of students that made the jump into faculty as well. So I'm very proud of all these students, and they're really the ones that they've done the work. So with that, I'll close and just say, thank you very much for your time and attention. And I hope you have a wonderful, Sparkle event, and feel free to reach out if you have questions. I'm happy to. Yes, I understand that there's a competition as part of the KPIT Sparkle event, and not everybody can win the competition. And it's great when you win, and it sometimes isn't fun when you don't win. But it's about the journey. It's about the opportunity to compete and challenge yourself. And if you're working toward a good outcome in a competition, doing something you enjoy, that's when you learn a lot, right? So it's less about winning than it's more about finding out where your passion is, and about testing yourself and learning, and that'll pay off a great dividend later in further steps you make. So the competition is often just like a framework to get people together to go after something and be motivated. But it's always more than just who wins and loses. It's what you learn and you get out of it that matters the most. Thank you very much.
Another enlightening session. Thank you very much. Let me welcome Jonathan Dutton, Marketing Director Sustainability at Dassault Systems. He is specialized in enterprise software, B2B marketing, future thinking, community animation, and engineering foundation, and has contributed in connecting and engaging with industry to help solve today's challenges of decarbonization, circular economy, and business resilience. So let's hear it from him.
Hello everyone, My name is Ajinkya Naik. I work as an industry consultant at Dassault Systems, and I would like to welcome you to this webinar on sustainable mobility. Dassault Systems and KPIT Sparkle have partnered to maximize productivity so that students can deliver first-time right physical prototypes with virtual twins. Our collaboration with KPIT is to offer students a medium through which they transition from idea to virtual prototyping and then finally physical modeling is attained with ease. This partnership will give the teams a chance to explore virtual modeling multiple times. This way, students can experiment with their virtual prototypes and check the various components using different calculations. This will thereby maximize their productivity and help them attain perfection in the quality of their final physical model. Based on our MOU with KPIT, we have ensured that the deserving projects receive a free 3D experience platform license. Our technical teams in India have organized a set of webinars already, and they will be working to identify the top two or three teams who can make a full demonstration of the use of the platform. I would now like to introduce the speaker of the webinar. Mr. Jonathan Dutton would be the speaker for the webinar. Jonathan is responsible for connecting and engaging with industry to help solve today's challenges of decarbonization, circular economy, business resilience, etc. He joined Dassault Systems in December 1999 after some stints in the automotive industry. He has a track record of advising and enabling clients on a range of needs, including enterprise software, B2B marketing, future thinking, community animation, and engineering foundation. So, over to you, Jonathan.
And talk to you all about sustainable mobility, because mobility is really, really, really important to us all. It's something it's in the DNA of humans, and it's part of our industry, or part of our leisure. It's getting us to work. It's providing us food. It's taking us to beautiful places around the world. So, yeah, it's really, really important. And we've seen a massive transition from mobility over the years. Today we are, well, we know where we are now. We can just look out the window. But, 250 years ago, mobility was in its infancy in the way we see it today. And thanks to mobility, we've become a lot more prosperous. But now we're at a situation where we are the limits of the current system. We are using far too much energy, far too much dirty energy, let's say, to move these, to enable us to be mobile. It's also very, very inefficient. So in some instances, electric trains are very efficient. They're reused over and over again. They do millions of kilometers every year, so they're efficient. They can always be made better, of course, but the worst culprit today is passenger cars. And passenger cars, if there are a 4- or 5-seater and they're only used in the morning and in the evening, we can say they're only 2% efficient. And the actual engine that's inside a passenger car can only be through thermodynamic principles, which I'm sure you all know very well. When you are using a chemical reaction to turn it into a mechanical movement, we can only ever hope to get a 40% efficiency out of an internal combustion engine. So we're in a situation where we just are using far too much energy, dirty energy coming from fossil fuels, just to move us these big, massive vehicles around, just in the morning and in the evening when we're talking about going to work. So we've clearly got to change the way we're doing things today. So it's not just a case of changing the vehicle. It's not the case of changing what an internal combustion engine vehicle into an electric vehicle. That is key. We have to do it, but it's not the end game. The end game is to really revisit the entire system, is to make the entire system efficient. Nature, for example, is an efficient system. But nature has been evolving over millions and millions of years. We've only been evolving our mobility systems for about 150 years. So we've still got a long way to go. But we can't, because one thing is key, is because we are now at the limits of climate change. And you probably all know the Paris Agreement states that by the end of this century, we must not increase our climate temperature more than 2 degrees, ideally 1.5 degrees. Otherwise, we will see catastrophic climate change, which we will not be able to control. So I said 1.5 degrees, but the trouble is today we're already at 1.1 degrees. So we've got to make a massive change. We've got to make a massive change today, and we have to reduce by 50% our carbon emissions by 2030. So we only have 8 years to reduce by 50% our current carbon emissions, and then drive down to zero carbon emissions by 2050 in order to achieve the 1.5 maximum degrees by the end of the century. So we have a massive, massive challenge ahead of us. So we have to remove carbon from all our transport systems. But we also have to make them much more efficient. And so the first step is, and I'd like to show you something that we do we have on our website. So let me show you first to give you an idea. So this is something that will allow you all to go and visit our website after this webinar. So if you go onto 3ds.com, you end up on the landing page, and you can go and visit the industry section. And as we're talking about mobility in this webinar, we're going to go into the mobility section, but you can also browse all the other different industries as well. Every industry has its own sustainability challenge, every single industry. So in transportation and mobility, I'd like to just take you to our innovation showroom. And here, so at this showroom really is to show you what's possible today, where our customers, where the industry is going, where education is going as well, around the actual development, the design and development of vehicles for tomorrow. And you'll find out later on that just the vehicle itself is not enough. It's very key to make this transformation for vehicles, but it's not enough. In a very basic manner to say it, there's 3 main stages when vehicles are created, before they're created, when they're designed and developed, and manufacturing is developed as well. There's the concept design, there's the vehicle engineering, and there's a vehicle manufacturing. When we want to build a new vehicle for sustainability, you know, it's not something, we just don't take an engine out of a car and put an electric motor in. You can do this for like, we see a lot this happening with classic cars as well, retrofitting. It is quite nice, it's quite good fun, but it's not going to create a system change within the industry and across the whole of nations, many different nations. So we have to start from the very beginning. So we have to understand what customers, what people want, because so many people say, I would love an electric car, but it's too expensive or it doesn't fit my needs. So we need to find out what those needs are. So we have to do what we call social ideation. It's all about understanding what people are saying on the web, on the internet. It's analyzing different conversations. It's analyzing different articles, and it provides us the information that we can start the ball rolling on what our customers want, what the industry wants as a whole, and how we can start to make this change, to make certain that we are answering the needs of people and understanding regulations as well. That's really, really important. The next topic is packaging. You have to make these vehicles desirable. People have to want to use them. They have to be desirable from the outside and from the inside, even things which you don't buy. When you sit, you could take an example. There is near where I live, we have new trains which have been put into service, and it is so nice to be in a new train. It means that I feel I'm much more. It's much more desirable for me to take this train every day to go to work than it is for me to use my car and be stuck in traffic jams. So this is part of this. It's very mental. We have to think about humans as a whole. It's not just an engineering thing. It's we're all humans. We want to do things which are generally nicer for us, more comfortable for us. And if we can produce desirable ways of moving around, which could not necessarily be the car, but a train or a new type of taxi, then we're going to want to go towards this new service. So we have to think about styling and packaging, and the way that we are the emotional side of mobility. Another thing as well is that, once you've understood what your customers want, what you've thought you've made something desirable, you have to have an overall architectural view of the components that you think you're going to use. Are you going to use a big battery? What type of battery? Are you going to use an electric motor? What type of electric motor? So you have to have this high-level view of all these different logical systems, so you can make certain that they all work together. So this is what we call system architecture. It's making certain as well that in a car, for example, the windscreen is the right angle, that the windscreen wipers are wiping the correct surface, that the way that you can simulate as well different percentiles of passengers. Big people, small people, can they all be comfortable inside this vehicle? Can they all drive safely? So I'm going through this very quickly, but I hope you'll all go back onto this website and look at these videos to understand the topics in more detail. So a second topic is now the engineering. How can we enhance multidiscipline vehicle engineering? So, and here's a topic straight away, which is I find from a sustainability point of view extremely interesting, because it's all about generative design and engineering. Now, what is that? In the past, we want to minimize weight and minimize cost, so it's used a lot in the aerospace industry, generative design. But now it's becoming very, very important from a sustainability point of view. The resources that we have, the natural resources we have, we all know they are limited. We can't just keep digging material out of the ground and producing more cars, more vehicles, and then just dumping them. Okay, cars are actually recycled quite well, but we can. There's so many things that we actually take, make, waste approach. So we have to think about how we can use these materials much more efficiently. If we're going to embrace a circular economy, we have to really make certain that these materials are used at the bare minimum. So we have tools which will allow you to define the functions of a system, the constraints of a system. You can select some materials to use, like aluminium, for example, and you create an envelope that you want this part to work in. And then all you do is we allow the simulation to run. and it'll produce the actual material you need. It'll define the material you need to make certain that all the constraints and the boundary conditions are respected. So here we can see, for example, depending on the manufacturing process as well, which has been defined, whether it's 3D printing or casting, what the end result will be. So this is the first step, where we're creating this material. We can then analyze different variants depending on the manufacturing process, or different sort of parameters which are important. This really allows us to produce components which are the lightest possible, which use the least amount of weight. And why when I say light, it immediately makes me think of this new trend that we have today, which is SUVs, very heavy electric vehicles, which are weighing like 2 tons, even more. And I think the future of mobility is a lightweight, frugal mobility, using very efficient systems. So, but also keeping mobility safe as well, which is important at the same time. We'll see that a bit later. So here we have an illustration of how this part has been, the weight has been taken right down to the bare minimum. And this is a part which is like 3D printed, but we can see how this part could look if it were, for example, if it were cast, and that's the initial design at the top, which was nearly 6 kilograms. Using additive manufacturing, we can get the weight down to nearly 2.45 and just under 3 kilograms for a cast component. So this is really important. This is just a simple bracket. So imagine we did this through a lot of different other components. We could reduce the weight, which is really, really important. Reduce the weight, which means we reduce the amount of energy which is used in the vehicle. But we also essentially reduce the amount of materials used to produce these components. Which means that we reduce the energy to make these components. And when it comes to recycling, well, you see we're reducing the energy required to recycle as well. So this is we're starting to get towards the basics of a circular economy by doing this. It's being more efficient, reducing the use of natural resources, and making recycling a lot easier by design. Now, if we want to simplify, so I'm taking this to the extreme. We all know that I think that vehicle electronics is critical now. We see this with a lot of new vehicles, which are electric vehicles, for example. We know they are software driven. We've seen this with Tesla, for example, that they are updating the software of your car once you've bought it. So you could say that your car is actually getting better after you've bought it, which is amazing. Generally, when you buy a car, the value depreciates. We could say that cars tomorrow, maybe the value will increase when you buy them, because they're actually becoming more advanced as the time goes on. But we could also think that if we made vehicles much more simple, how could we keep the user experience enjoyable? Well, could this be through software as well? We could also imagine that vehicles are becoming more and more connected with themselves, with their infrastructure. So software development is very, very, very important, and is key to mobility of the future. And so this means that I have a mechanical engineering degree, and my son is now in his first year of university doing engineering as well. But the big change is that no longer can you really hope, or should you actually specialize in one domain. Engineers of tomorrow have to understand the mechanical world, they have to understand software, they have to understand electronics, They have to understand maybe even a bit of chemistry as well if they want to work with batteries. So the engineers of tomorrow, at least during the beginning of your studies, I think you have to be have a much broader view on your topic, on different engineering topics. And even this is why I mentioned that very first thing at the beginning about, you know, the human desire, is that you also have to think about the soft side, of the emotional side of how people will be using tomorrow's products and services. Because you could make the best, most efficient car in the world, but if it's not desirable, no one will use it. And to find out whether it's desirable, after you've done all these engineering activities, you think you've made you think you've made the perfect car in a virtual environment. You need to test it virtually as well. So there's so many now different use cases which can be tested virtually, from acoustics to crash testing to noise and vibrations to thermal loading. So there's really a tremendous amount of different scenarios which you can test, especially now. And why is this important? So going back to what I initially said at the beginning, is that we have to reduce by 50% our carbon emissions by 2030. So in 8 years. We don't have time to do iterative engineering that we've been doing for the past 100, 150 years in mobility. We don't have time to do that anymore, because when we look at cars today, at least car and even trains, they're pretty much the same as they were 100 years ago. So now we have to think of radical new innovations, new ways of keeping us mobile, but by reducing carbon emissions by 50% in 8 years. And I mean, I truly believe that the only way we can do this is to imagine, design, develop, and test these radically new innovations in a virtual environment. And then when we go out and make them in factories, they will be right and green first time. We just do not have the time to make something and test it physically and then have to go back to the drawing board and start again. We just cannot do this. Let's make all the errors and find out all the problems in a virtual world, and then get it right first time in the real world. That is really what it's all about. And beforehand, this was important for obviously cost reasons, for time to market, etc., for profitability. And this is all still relevant, but now it's really, really important about reducing carbon emissions, embracing a circular economy. So we just do not have the time to waste anymore. So this is an overall picture of vehicle concept design and vehicle engineering. Of course, this is a car, but this could also be a motorbike. It could be a scooter. It could be a train. It could even be an aircraft as well. Everything that's enables us to be mobile. So we've seen the concept design, we've seen the engineering of vehicles, but how do we know that we can actually make them? The vehicle manufacturing or the manufacturing engineering is extremely critical. So this is something which doesn't, I mean, I've done this as like a 1, 2, 3 approach, but manufacturing engineers have to be involved at the really early in the overall design and development processes. They have to maybe rethink their manufacturing facilities, or maybe they have to say to the designers and the engineers of the products, that no, you can't go in that direction because we don't have the machines for that. So that's a very basic use case, but the whole idea is that everyone's working together, whether you're a conceptual designer, a product engineer, whether you're a simulation expert, or whether you're a manufacturing engineer. Everyone can work together in the same virtual environment, working on the same data, but everyone's doing their own speciality. And I think that's really, really important, that this and mobility is in general becoming more and more multidiscipline, more and more. I've mentioned before that that engineers have to understand multiple different domains, and this is the reason, is that even though you may be more of a specialist in one domain, you still have to understand and talk the same language to the rest of your in your future jobs, people in different domains, and you have to understand what they're talking about. So from a manufacturing side, there is you have to basically build your manufacturing plant. You have to understand what the different machines are doing. You have to understand the constraints of the machines, what these different machines are capable of doing. You have to be able to understand how you can then, when you've actually designed this in a virtual environment, how can you ramp up the manufacturing in site in the physical world? So it's a very complex topic. So, and of course, the transition that we are living today with that designers and developers have had to make this transition from being an internal combustion engine specialist, for example. You could have someone who's been working 20 years designing internal combustion engines, and now we're saying to that person, well, you've got to now design batteries and electric motors. So that's a big change, and it's the same for manufacturing. You now no longer, or will you be manufacturing rather internal combustion engines. You'll be manufacturing now electric motors, battery packs, all the different battery control units. So it's a big change, and also the volumes may change. You know, will we, if we have mobility as a service, will we be producing more cars? I hope not, actually. I would like the industry to produce less cars, but provide more mobility, which means that vehicles will be offered as a service. It means that vehicles will be, if they're offered as a service, then maybe they'll be no longer doing 200,000 kilometers a year in their lifetime. They may be doing 1 million. So this means the manufacturing process has to change. Products have to have a higher quality. They have to be more robust. We could imagine manufacturing as well, demanufacturing, design, disassembly, because vehicles have to be much more recyclable than they are today. Today, cars, the actual you may have heard of end of life vehicle. Today, the regulation is that vehicles have to be 95% recyclable, which doesn't mean that they are. It just means that they have to allow cars to be recycled to 95% of all the different components. But very soon, this regulation is going to change to be 100%. So how can we not only manufacture these vehicles, but how can we also disassemble these vehicles at the end of their lives? So manufacturing is vast. It's about, we can see here is understanding how a worker has access to different parts of the vehicle. Is there an accessibility problem? There's also operations execution, because when the factory is actually in operation, we have to run it. You have to make certain that there's no lag between different operations, different steps in the manufacturing process. We have to be able to monitor all the different stations in the factory. So this is an overall package to really understand which machines you need. Can the operators build the machines? Do we need a new factory or not? If we design a vehicle in one country, can another country produce it? Bearing in mind that they have different machines, but then I've got a second country as well which wants to produce it, and again they've got even more different machines. So we have to juggle with different factories, different machines in each factory, but all the time producing the same product. And then we have to be able to execute and run these factories once the production started. So we can see that there is from design, from engineering to manufacturing, there is so many different things that can be done and that have to be done in a virtual environment in order to, and again, it's so important, in order to bring to the market these radically new innovations to reduce carbon emissions by 50% by 2030. So to conclude, what I'd like to say as well is that there is not just the vehicle to think of, but where the vehicle is in its environment and how it's being used. So electric vehicles is a key, is key to this change, of course, but it's not the end game, because there's no point just having electric vehicle traffic jams. That's not going to change the world. It's going to improve end user emissions, so maybe there'll be less emissions in cities, but we're going to have a resource depletion. There's going to be recycling problems. So just changing vehicles to electric isn't enough. It has to be done, but it's not enough. We have to also change the way we use vehicles. We have to think of a new model, mobility as a service. So this means as well we have to think of not just making a vehicle and selling it. We have to be able to provide it as a service, and this is bringing out a whole new mindset as well. So I really hope that you've enjoyed this talk, and I hope that you're inspired to produce tomorrow's mobility, and I hope you're ready to take on the challenge of reducing carbon emissions by half by 2030. I think it's an amazing moment. It's a very, very exciting period to be in. It might sound challenging, but I think that this is when we have these sort of challenges in front of us, this is when we humans, I think, we excel. And I think this is when especially engineers who are always excited to find new solutions for very important challenges, we find value in the work that we're doing. And I think this is an amazing time to be a young engineer and to find solutions for tomorrow's mobility.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Jonathan. I think it was a really, really insightful webinar, and I'm sure students are going to be inspired. And we're all looking forward to what the students will create using the 3D experience platform. And to sum it up, I would say that with the platform you can co-design, co-simulate, and collaborate, all using one single tool. So the students can look at the platform as their Swiss knife. They can do manufacturing simulation, they can do MBAC, do project management using a single platform. So I'm really inspired, and I hope all the students really end up creating something amazing with the platform. So if you create something great, do not forget to share it on the swim community. So we have dedicated swim communities. So we have a TNM community, we have a Katia community. So please do share your innovations with us, and I'm sure you'll inspire many other people also. So once again, thanks a lot, Jonathan, and thanks a lot all the students, who are watching this webinar. So best of luck for the competition.
Good luck, everyone.
Thanks, Jonathan. This was very informative and quite insightful, I must say. Now, with so much pride, I would like to call upon Miss Mili Kapadia, the founder of Estree Iron Services, to share her views on a very important question. Do women make better entrepreneurs? Ms. Kapadia's venture, Estree, is primarily a steam iron service dedicated to improving the wellness of clothes with a greater goal of achieving women empowerment in the process. Other than steam ironing, they offer stain removal, rafu and repair and disinfection services for garments. While there are many ventures that provide these services, Ms. Kapadia's Estree stands out for taking an initiative to empower the women around her, and who better than a women entrepreneur to add to the stew of many debatable answers about women in entrepreneurship. Ms. Kapadia, I request you to please take over.
We have with us Mili Kapadia, founder of Estree. Mili, thank you for speaking to us. What was your inspiration for launching Estree?
I started Estree as I came across a problem. So during the end of pandemic, I moved back to India to finish my dissertation. One of the findings of my dissertation was a massive gap in the labor market when it comes to equal wages. And also during the pandemic, a lot of women laborers were getting laid off. I wanted to make sure that does not affect their families. So I created a sustainable business model in order to provide them with skill development, a guaranteed job opportunities, and financial independence.
Great. Now, when it comes to challenges, what were the prime challenges you faced while running your company?
Absolutely. So I faced, as many entrepreneurs, two challenges that you face. One is fear of failure. Every time you start something new, you have an idea, you go for it. There is always this fear in the back of the mind. What if it doesn't work out? What if it fails? I came to realize that fear is one of the greatest motivator. And so in order to succeed, it is important to make your fear your strength. So you will not only get this new sense of confidence, but you will also move forward and go for it.
Now, I do not want to get into this argument of male entrepreneurs versus female entrepreneurs, but are there some inherent traits in a woman which make them a somewhat formidable entrepreneur or somewhat different?
So I personally don't believe that gender matters when it comes to entrepreneurship. In order to be a good entrepreneur, you need to have a good idea, you need to have a good value system, and you need to have lots of resilience. So gender is not an imperative factor when it comes to if you will become a good entrepreneur or not.
Okay, now Mili, you have reached a certain standard of entrepreneurship. If I may ask, what would be your advice to upcoming budding entrepreneurs who might want to follow your footsteps?
So my message to young entrepreneurs would be, this is something from my own experience, something that has really changed my life and my balance. Every time an entrepreneur, there is always stress, something new, something exciting. You have to keep working, you have to keep getting new things in the market. And one of the biggest things that an entrepreneur faces is a lot of crisis situations, a lot of emergency situations, a lot of problem solving situations. And so initially, when I was a fresh entrepreneur, I used to wake up in the morning and I used to pray God that, God, please don't give me any problems. Let me have a good, well-planned day. And every time at the end of the night, I would get, so problems are inevitable. They would come. You cannot control that. But I could change the narrative. So when I had that first ideology that, I would pray to God that don't let any problems come. Even if the problems came, I would be disappointed by the end of the night. So I had to change my outlook into saying, I used to wake up in the morning and then tell God, it's okay, bring on the challenges, bring on the problems. I'm just going to fight all of them and I'm going to get a solution for all of them. So by the end of the evening, when you're winding down, you feel productive just because you controlled your narrative. So that is one advice that I would like to part to.
Now, we've always debated the role of education. Do you think education is important in entrepreneurship?
Education, yes. So I believe education is something that you pay for. Education is something you get in school, in colleges with your degrees. But when it comes to knowledge is absolutely free. When I started as an entrepreneur, so I'm a development practitioner. I do not have much background in finance or marketing or anything which has to do with MBA. If you ask any founder, any entrepreneur, finance is such an integral part. It is something every entrepreneur should know. And so I did not go seek a course for it, or I did not seek an education for it. I simply Googled and I tried to gain as much as free knowledge as possible. So it is something that is ongoing. Just because if you're not educated doesn't mean you cannot be knowledgeable.
Thank you, Mili Kapadia, for speaking to us. I hope many entrepreneurs follow your footsteps and take inspiration from you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Ms. Kapadia, for your wonderful words and for being such an inspiration for all the women out there. Just a few days back, a show about innovation and investment took the internet by storm and flooded our feeds with thousands of memes. Ring any bells? Yes, you are right. I am talking about Shark Tank India. How many of you have watched Shark Tank India? Come on, raise your hands. Well, was it worth the hype? Our next and the final speaker for today will answer that question for all of us. Let me invite Mr. Saurabh Mangulkar, the founder of EventBeep, an online student event coordinator for college students from all over the world. EventBeep is a social network that allows students with similar interests from all over the world to connect with each other. Moreover, it also provides mentorship from top experts through live interactive voice events. So I'm sure we can't wait for his session to begin.
We have with us Saurabh Mangulkar, who is the founder of EventBeep. Saurabh, tell us something about EventBeep. What is it like at EventBeep?
So EventBeep is a platform. So I'll give you a context. How is a IIT different from other colleges? What's typically different is maybe the colleges are same, the lectures are same, teachers teach the same thing. What's necessarily different is the community. These colleges have alumni who go into Harvard, who go into MIT, the top colleges, build $1 billion of business. All these IITians have an inspiration as a mentor. But if you see at a tier 2, tier 3 college, tier 4 college, the only dream or aspiration that they have is I want to get into a good job. That's it. That's the biggest thing that they look at. Now, what we are truly doing at EventBeep is we're bringing this tier 1 community, which is high quality mentors, which is high quality students who they can sort of work with together. And we're bringing this tier 1 college community to tier 2, tier 3 colleges, so that now students start understanding what future passions and interests could look like instead of just the job mentality. That's in short what we are doing as EventBeep.
Now, if I understand, Saurabh, what is the exact problem you're trying to solve here? Is it unemployability? Is it giving exposure to tier 2 and tier 3 students? What is the exact problem you are trying to address?
The problem is at very core. Now, if you look at the unemployability problem comes in because students sort of go into sector or areas that they're not passionate about, that they don't love or they don't really want to do it. And that's where there's a big gap between what industry wants and what students are doing. And what we are at essentially core are trying to do is we are actually helping them find their passion in their college life. Let's suppose a student is brilliant at design, but he's doing chemical engineering. Obviously, the chemical engineering company won't want a student who's not really passionate about the chemicals and what is sort of going on into the industry. So what we help students to understand is designing is your passion. There's a career there. Why don't you just go at it? So when we look at core and sort of try solving at the core, the typical problem, which is of unemployment, it typically gets solved because then students go out of their way to become a brilliant designer. So that's necessarily where we are targeting.
Okay, in the given scenario, who would be your likely competitors and what are the challenges you anticipate in the future?
In terms of competitors, I think it's not when we started EventBeep, it was more towards helping students and changing a revolution. Although there is a business sense to it, but we believe that we focus on the value. We make sure that students are getting the best quality at whatsoever they would sort of stick on. And in terms of competitors, another way what students are doing right now is LinkedIn could be one. There are a couple of startups who are doing this at a very small scale, would be one. But I think typically there isn't a platform wherein all of this could happen eventually.
Now, I don't want to talk individually about Shark Tank, but tell us your fundraising story. What was it like raising funds? What were the challenges you faced? And what is life after Shark Tank now?
Yeah, definitely happy to share. So I think it has been a very tough one, especially when you're from a college which is not so IIT or IIM. And it becomes, and especially if you're a college student, it becomes really difficult. So talking about me, I think it started about 2 years back. And typically students are in this sort of dilemma that we have a startup, we'll raise funds and then we'll be all of it. So I started very initially. I have spoken to more than 100 investors. There are a lot of investors who are really good on point, but there are a lot of investors who sort of waste your time. So we have witnessed that there were a couple of investors who sort of gave in commitments that we want to invest 2 crores, 4 crores into your company. This was at a very start level, but then they sort of just ghosted in terms of tomorrow, day after. It sort of wasted another year. So I think what's really important is the type of investor that you're onboarding. That's one. Made more than 100 pitches, built that as in terms of the pitching abilities. It understood. I was able to sense what investors really look at. So that was one. But I think what sort of speaks is the numbers, the revenue numbers, the traction numbers. If there's nothing, these numbers can make you get the investment. Typically, that's what helped in the end. We got in the numbers, we defocused completely from investment to focus on business. Got in the numbers, got in revenues, got in the users. That's when every investor then started looking at us. There was one phase wherein I used to go behind investors, about 100 of them. Second phase, I said, no investors, I'll just focus on business. The moment I did it, hundreds of investors actually lined up behind us saying that take our money. So we had to say no to almost 7 investors who wanted to come in to our last round. So that happened, and after that Shark Tank happened. So yeah, I think it has been an amazing journey. Now it's more like a celebrity. You go into shops, you go into public places, people are like, I have seen you somewhere. But it's completely paradigm shift in terms of what has happened.
Now, Saurabh, people generally extrapolate and overhype the importance of idea in the startup ecosystem. Do you think that we have come a long way that, you can expose your ideas to as many people as possible, because eventually it's execution is what matters? Do you think this theory is correct, or you think I'm faffing?
Correct. So students are essentially the audience who we cater to, but now there are so many people who are related directly, they have something to do with students. So there are 4 broad areas wherein we monetize. The number one area is digitizing and gamifying campuses. So what we essentially also do is we build these communities and we give it to colleges. So we go into college, say that your college community is not that good. We would get this community from IITs, IIMs, people who are working in top institutes and organizations. And this was essentially help your college. And then we provide some SaaS-based tools as well. So we charge colleges for that. That is one. The second revenue is we charge for brands. So all these brands now, they are sort of running in the competition on Instagram, Facebook. They want to look for more areas to reach their target audience, which is college students, the youth basically, and it's very hard to tap them. Yeah, so that's essentially what we do. What we really do is we charge brands. So these brands have branding budgets. So we run campaigns. Let's say Gold Gym wants to reach out to students who are looking to join a new gym. We ran a video contest saying that do 20 push-ups in 20 seconds, you get 50% off on gym memberships. So that's second. Third is we charge edtech companies. Now we know which student is from which year, what is his aspiration, does he want to do a job after his college. And that's necessary. What we do then is we make sure that students are targeted with the right courses, and that's how we monetize. So we charge edtech companies. Fourth is we have events and workshops onto the platform. So we charge a commission on whenever a ticket is sold on these events and workshops. So that's typically what we do right now. There are many avenues to explore, but this has been something that has worked for us for now.
Now, going with the trend, Saurabh, I have 3 rapid fire round questions for you. So let's start with the first one. What are your biggest fears, top 3 fears as an entrepreneur?
Biggest fear is me not be able to achieve my goals and visions that I have set out.
Top 3 mistakes you have made as an entrepreneur and of course learned from them.
Of 2 mistakes I would mention. One, team building. I think should have understood the importance of high quality people on the team. Number 1. Second, experimentation. I think the product market fit stage is something that we didn't know before what it means. Like, so these are things that I would have worked on pretty early on.
Okay, now the final one. Your favorite event at EventBeep?
My favorite event. So although it used to be an events platform, but now it's more like a social network of how Facebook and LinkedIn typically are. But yeah, I think this talk of all the Shark Tank participants who pitched on to Shark Tank, every week they have a session with college students to sort of help them out with their business journeys. So that has been favorite. I think everyone sort of putting on knowledge for college students. That's quite inspiring for students.
3 most important people in your entrepreneurial journey and how did they help you?
First, it would be my parents. Second, or the whole team at EventBeep. I think no less than 200 people have joined hands to make EventBeep what it is today. Third is the mentors and investors. I think they have been guiding us. Whatever their inputs have been are tremendously important. So yeah, I think these are the 3 key people that are quite helpful.
Saurabh Mangulkar, this was a pleasure. Thank you for speaking to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mangulkar, for that exciting session and your insightful opinion. I can't believe it's that time of the day again. They say all good things come to an end, but luckily for us, this isn't the end yet. After all, picture abhi baki hai mere dost. It was an inspiring day that took the learning curve a notch ahead for all of us. With so much pleasure, I'd like to thank everyone involved in putting together KPIT Sparkle 2022 and making it so much special, right from our back-end team to students, mentors and colleges. Without your contribution, this event wouldn't turn out the way it has. Let me take this opportunity to thank our distinguished speakers who educated us and taught us a little more about innovations and sustainability. This evening has come to an end, but the event hasn't. We are in for yet another unforgettable day of delight. Don't miss out because tomorrow's agenda is filled with some remarkable personalities and we can't wait for you to hear and interact with them. Until then, have a great day. Goodbye.